There was people, one guy ate his parents back in the 70s or 60s. He'd been
Ate
down.
his parents?
Yeah, he was a cannibal. He actually got released in 2012.
No way.
Yeah.
So he wasn't on death row.
He was on death row. He was sentenced to life, but he outlived their life sentence. Like a life sentence is not always life. It's 25 years.
And they gave him parole. Yeah. He ate his parents and they gave him parole.
Yeah, I was nice to
Don't
this
say
guy.
this isn't a country of second chances.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to do too well.
What's cooking, everybody? If you are on YouTube right now, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button on the video, and as always, if you have a second, would love to see you drop a comment down in the video comments section as well. I said this last week, and I'll say this again to everyone who has been sharing the links to these episodes with friends. Thank you so much. It is not only huge for the algo, it is huge for word of mouth, even on Apple and Spotify. I'm not just talking YouTube. Everywhere. It is absolutely great. So I really, really appreciate everyone who's been doing that. And let's keep that rolling. To everybody who is listening on Apple or Spotify right now, thank you for checking out the show there. If you haven't already, be sure to follow on either one of those platforms and leave a 5-star review if you have a second. And I look forward to seeing you guys again for future episodes. Now, I am joined in the bunker today by Dan, aka Big Dan Thayer. And if you saw the intro snippet, if you're on YouTube, you can tell Dan's a big dude. He's like, I don't know, 6'6", 6'7", 320, something like that. Big guy. The kind of guy that when I cross him in the street, I'm looking up at him like, oh shit. But Dan's life is a giant comeback story against all odds. This is somebody who for years now has been a mentor to many other people. And for years before that, never should have statistically gotten to the position to be able to do that. This is a guy who is deemed incorrigible by the Florida State Correctional System or whatever it is, because he was in prison by the time he was 15. You're going to hear all about that. That's a whole nother story. Somebody who I think was definitely very fucked over by the system, but he was in and out of prison for, 15, 20 years, in and out of crime, all this different stuff, and drugs, all of it. And he took control of his life completely. And again, this is not the kind of guy who statistically is supposed to be able to do that, given all of his circumstances that he was working against, but he found a way. And so we had a great conversation about the psychology that went into that over the years. He's a very funny guy, so he tells a lot of funny stories. He also tells a lot of real stories. It's an ugly life when you're in crime. It's not, and drugs specifically, I should say. It's not something that anyone should ever want to be a part of. And so a lot of Dan's messages here's exactly why you don't want to get involved with that stuff. And so I really, really appreciated the conversation. We had our buddy Mark in here who was actually the connector of making this thing happen, which I really appreciate. Even if he wouldn't shut up about his friend Megan the whole time. You should probably give the guy a call, Megan. He's going to kill me for saying that, but I should still say that. But anyway, it was great to finally actually get a chance to connect with Dan on the podcast. And once again, thank you to Mark for making it happen. And I hope all of you enjoy it. That said, you know what it is. I'm Julian Dorey, and this is TRENDIFIER. Let's go! This is one of the great questions in our culture. Where is the nuance? You're giving opinions and calling them facts. You feel me? Everyone understands this, but few seem to do it. If you don't like the status quo, start asking questions. Some dude's like walking by, he goes, Sir, can you tell me what your decision to be here is and what you think of the impending storm? Right. And the guy goes into like this full-blown like biologist explanation, like straight out of like Galaxy Brain. Right. He's like, well, according to the winds from the north that say that we're going to be at approximately 6 knots per second, which is not very good for a storm like this. Right. And the dude holding the mic's like, what the fuck? And for like 3 minutes, he gives this thing, and they go back
into a meteorologist.
They go back to studio, and they're like, that was some of the smartest shit we've ever heard in our life.
Yeah, he did that guy a job.
Hope it was all right. Pull that.
So this is okay here?
Yeah, never farther than that.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's okay here, by the way.
And I got to put these on or no?
Yeah, put those on, because you'll hear me. You'll hear me in there.
I was trying to get it.
I think I turned that down. How's that?
That's good.
Pretty good.
Pork and beans, man.
Pork and beans.
What's that a reference to?
Something about bear.
Yeah.
That's it.
Take Dan's
Frankenbeans.
Frankenbeans.
Yeah, don't take the headphone out. Dan will kill you.
Frankenbeans.
Touch my headphones.
I remember watching that movie for the first time.
I spit over a whole family.
I peed myself.
Yeah,
I did.
yeah.
I was like, this is the funniest shit I've ever seen in my life.
Poor family in front of me. I spit my Diet Coke all over them. Twice.
What was the one thing where he's like, he's trying to get the nerves out, so he's jerking off in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And then he comes out, he's like, where is it?
Yeah. Oh, moose. Yeah. That was the part I spit on. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't hold it in. I just took a big sip. And she goes, oh, look, moose. And her head's like a peacock or something.
Remember, she had it like standing up.
Yeah,
oh my god. I gotta go back and rewatch that.
I got
movie.
embarrassed for the people in that movie. Like, you know what I mean? I felt the embarrassment of, like, I don't know. Just, I could feel it. It transmitted to me.
Hysterical. And this, by the way, this thing right here, you can pull that up too.
Okay.
See that? There you go. Now keep it pointed at you. Now,
that?
there you go.
All right.
That's
cool.
beautiful. Now I got you like real good in my ears right here.
Nice.
Big
Working
Dan?
Good. Yeah.
Thank you for coming down, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All the way from Florida.
Yeah.
And where are you in Florida?
Southwest
Naples.
corner of Florida.
That's like bougie area of Florida. That's
Yeah.
like the place now.
Yeah, way above my pay grade. Yeah.
How long you been there?
32 years.
32 years.
Yeah.
With a little pit stop on the way.
Yeah, a couple of them. Yeah.
Something like that. Something like that.
4 of them.
Well, our guy Mark here made the introduction, and for people listening out there, I got to speak with you on, I guess, like Zoom, like a month ago or something.
Yeah.
And I always say this: I try to make these conversations short when we do it because I like to just do it live in here. But
Spontaneous.
once in a while, it's usually like 1 out of 3. Somebody starts going, and I'm like, "Oh, this is too good." But I was listening to tell some of these stories, and I'm like, "God damn, people are gonna eat this up." It's a wild life you've had, man.
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't experience much of it.
What do you mean you didn't experience much of it?
I kind of stayed. I just didn't experience it. I was there. I got the documentation. I got the. I was there, but I lived in my head. So it was a pretty, like, some people feel almost sorry for me. I was like, yeah, my life wasn't that bad. Yours was rough, being out here dealing with people and stuff like that. It was a weird perspective. I didn't start experiencing life till maybe 38, 39. And
Is that when that was like shortly after you got out of prison, right?
I got out in 2008 out of my last bid, and that was in Florida, the Florida State Prison, Rayford, they call it death row. I got out of there in 2008, and I had been practicing some things, some different ways of living, and this guy was writing me and giving me books to read, and I started looking at things differently.
Who was doing that?
This was a guy I met. He was from Poughkeepsie, New York, and I met him in Fort Myers, Florida. A friend of mine that was he actually escaped from Rahway, and he was doing good for a short period of time, and I had called him for some help with something pretty dark, and so when I called him, he goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna bring you up here to Fort Myers," and I was like, "No. I'm okay down here. Just, do what I ask, and that's it." So he ends up like kind of tricking me into going up to this place up there and getting my head together, and introduces me to this guy who I thought was a clown. You know what I mean? But the guy was like really smart. Not that I was any brainiac, but we had a certain percentile that we hung out with, that there was just no room for joking.
Got it.
Yeah. So, and when I met this guy, he kept saying things, but they were like slick, and I didn't know if he was being slick or but they were hitting me. They were like, I don't know how to explain it, but they were talking to my inside. Yeah, things I haven't brought up or talked about in years, and so anyway, we got pretty close. I ended up living with the guy for 6 months.
After you got out,
him and his wife after I got out of this little place here, I was living with him for like 6 months, and he kept almost getting. I almost like wanted to choke him out a couple times because he would say things that there were truth, and I couldn't debate it, but they were hard truths, And
you need that though.
You need that, but I've never had that. Like nobody's brought that type. Well, they tried. They tried to bring that kind of truth up. Things that were evident that I should have just surrendered to, I would just make it to where you never said it again. You know what I mean? And it was a weird like defense mechanism I had that I couldn't let you in. And if you knew the real truth about me, well, I just made sure you never brought it up again. You know what I mean? And it was all confusing because I made it confusing. I used drugs on top of it. I didn't really know what it was growing up. I obsessed about things. I blocked out everything except for what I was obsessing about, and I would achieve it, but it never seemed to be what I was really wanting. It never brought me any satisfaction.
I really want to dig into this, and you and I actually did talk about this a little bit when we were on our call, and I think that's, like, when people are listening to stories of other individuals, regardless of where they come from, I think a lot of us have an innate interest in the psychological journey that goes on, because it's different for everyone. And everyone has their weaknesses, everyone has their strengths, and some people, they lean into their weaknesses for long periods of time and they don't even know they have the strengths. And sometimes there's people who are incredibly ahead of their years and they lean into all their strengths and they wash away their weaknesses. And I'm curious about what makes people fork in the road on different things. And to me, you know, one of my favorite things is I love a comeback story.
Yeah.
And like your life is a giant comeback story. And I think that is very much at the middle of it. Like how you, when you were talking about like getting in touch with your own thoughts and understanding exactly like, oh, this is why I think this way. Or, oh, wait, I shouldn't have done it like that.
Yeah. When it started clicking.
So there's clarity that comes from certain things like not using drugs and stuff like that. But before we go to that, like let's go through your journey here. You got a story.
Sure.
Let's start at the beginning.
All right.
Where were you born?
I was born in New Jersey, you know, and I moved from, my dad was a chemist, so we, you know, always lived close to plants. We started out in Camden, moved to Newark, Essex County, Bloomfield. And my cousins used to say a weird thing when they came to our house. They'd say, we used to love going to your house because they were in Livingston, which is a very nice, you know, compared to where I was at. Yeah. He goes, we always felt like we were doing something wrong when we came. Like mischievous or something, you know. So I grew up mostly in Newark and in Bloomfield, East Orange, West Orange. I had a friend that we'd be on bikes constantly. And my father worked pretty hard. My mother had a place up in Montclair.
That's a nice neighborhood.
Oh, yeah, Church Street. She had a gourmet pantry. She started really
sounds
good
very Montclair.
Yeah. I remember I made a peanut butter and caviar sandwich, and she made me eat it. I thought it was jelly.
Peanut butter and caviar.
Yeah, little packet of caviar. You know, like $55, whatever it was at the time.
That sounds worse than
yeah.
prison
She told
food.
me to eat something, so I went in there and made a peanut butter and caviar, thinking it was jelly. You know, and she goes, yeah, you're going to eat that. So that was a very expensive sandwich. And that was after driving all the way up Bloomfield Avenue to go up there on my bike, you know. And, you know, just the thing about living there is there was nonstop chaos, always, you know. And so I never had a time to process. It was always react.
When you say chaos?
Like people stealing the car, breaking in the house, you know, there was always something, fights out in the street, you know, but my father, who was, he was a Golden Gloves boxer and, he, you know, pretty well known, he always handled things. And up until about 81, you know, he's pretty good at keeping the house, you know, safe and secure. But I remember in 81, the plant blew up down in Newark, Quality Varnish. It was a big explosion.
I didn't know about this.
Yeah. I actually looked it up. It's on the. I'm not the most technologically advanced person.
Check it out. What's it called?
Quality Varnish.
And this was in 81. What
81 or 83? It's a little. I think it was 81, but I'm pretty sure. If you look up early 80s, Quality Varnish.
So what happened?
So they were making these. They had these huge vats, and I would go to work with my father all the time. And he ran the place, you know, all his guys were very loyal to him. And they sent in the wrong chemicals, and a reaction started, and the whole place blew up. My dad got sent into a wall. He was in a coma for 8 months.
He lived?
He lived.
Lived
yeah.
through the explosion.
Yeah, he lived through the explosion. But his good friend, who was like an uncle to me, a guy named Jerome, he died. And when my dad came out of the coma, you know, they all got settlements. And he went from like a functioning, you know, drinker, you know, pretty responsible guy to burned head to toe. His tattoo was off his arm, like that kind of burns. Looked weak and decrepit.
And they were, I just have the, I'm sorry, I have the article behind you now from the New York Times. I was just pulling it up while you were talking.
Yeah.
So it was only Jerome and your dad who were in it.
Yeah.
Your dad was hurt and Jerome was killed.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's on there?
Yeah, because it says one killed, one hurt.
Yeah,
so it sounds like there's only two people. They were the only two there.
And the part that was really messed up is Jerome got out and went back in and got my dad out because he was like a loyal, good friend of his, you know. And my father just, when he came out of that, he was pretty. They had a party in the burn unit, and I forget what hospital it was, but the nurses came in there when he just came out of a coma after 8 months. They got a keg in the corner, bottles of Jack Daniels, and they're all like, you know, trying to, you know, get back to business as usual. But my father was really messed up over that, and it changed him. You know, and
was he ever normal again, like physically and everything?
Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. He's almost died. Like he's been run over by a truck. He was left for dead. The guy just keeps coming back. In fact,
9 lives.
Yeah, about 7 years ago, they wanted me to sign a paper saying, you know, let him die.
Oh, the DNR.
There's no chance. Yeah. And I said, just act like he's gonna live, and he did. He's fine now. He's got, you know, a bunch of years of doing good.
Wow.
He's still, you know, he face plants every now and then, but he's good. He's a tough guy. But yeah, so when they had that party, that was the beginning of the downfall between him and my mother, and things got really chaotic now because he came home weak, and I was like, I gotta be the man.
And how old are you?
I was about 8 years old.
Jesus.
Yeah. I remember trying to buy a pistol from
at 8.
Yeah.
You tried to buy a pistol at 8 years old.
Yeah, from a crackhead, you know, in my neighborhood. I was like, dude, I need you to get me a gun. He's trying to, yeah, I got to be the man. You know, if somebody comes in the house now, I'm gonna cap them. You know, I was all screwed up, but I really had this pressure on me to, you know, do things that I didn't even know how to do, but I knew I was gonna do them. You know, look out for my family, and you know, told my dad, you know, if he was gonna make it, but it didn't look good. He was
gone for 8 months.
Hair.
And,
like the weakest I ever seen him, and he's always been about 6'2", 220. You know, I went and got bigger than him, but he had strong hands. And before he got sober again this last time down in Florida, I think it was like 8 cops on him before they asked him, can you just calm down? Yeah. He's like, why didn't you just ask me that? He was slinging them around. He's
what
like
a New Jersey guy.
Yeah.
Through and through.
Yeah, I was telling Mark on the way over here when I seen Atlantic City, he rode limos when the chemistry was, you know, when it was down or whatever, they didn't have a job. So he would drive limos for this company out of Boonton. Is a good friend of ours and good family. And they would say, don't drink and drive. We'll do it for you. We're professionals. We know what we're doing. And that's what the job was. I would
that might make me think twice.
Yeah. No, back then it was like, yeah, these guys know what they're doing. They're really good. They got no history of accidents or, you know. So, yeah, it was a little crazy. But
they're giving limos down in AC now for like $10 outside. Wow. I swear to God. Wow. My buddy got one like 3-4 months ago. We played it on this podcast, too, because he was on right after. Right. But he was like, oh, we're going to go to the club. And we're like, we're going to stay here. And then I go outside and he's got like one of those like 6-door limos pulling them out. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, Jesus Christ. Like, you're just going to the club. Right. And then he's like, dude, it costs $10.
What is that?
I'm like, damn, times are getting hard at Atlantic City.
Yeah.
Crazy shit.
It was rough back then, but only when you walked off the boards, you know what I mean? Like, once you got off a certain area, you would get mugged.
It's still not, certainly not it's not a place without sketchy areas. Yeah, let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Still remains.
Yeah, you could be 2 seconds and you're in a bad predicament. You know.
But your dad and your mom got divorced after this whole thing? Yeah,
it took a few years. Yeah, my grandfather had passed. He took his last drink in front of me and kind of face planted in some eggplant parm, and they moved me, around to that family in Boonton, and then my cousins in Morristown or in Livingston.
What family in Boonton? I had somebody come up to me this past weekend who shall remain nameless and asked me with a straight face if they thought 8 Sleep was as good as Sleep Number. That was tough to hear that question. It was very difficult. I had to re-educate them. We'll leave it at that. They walked away knowing full well the error in their ways and even comparing those two. But you all know why I love 8 Sleep. 8 Sleep is the first real, legit, actual tech company to try sleep instead of sleep companies. Chumpanies. I almost called them chumpanies. That would have been good, though. Sleep companies trying tech. It's because 8 Sleep's proprietary technology wires directly into their 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover, which is what I use. It comes in queen and king sizes, so that throughout the night, your sleep stages are optimized around you using all kinds of scientific stuff like your body temperature, your heartbeat, your heart rate, all that stuff that I don't really know about. But what I do know is that when you wake up in the morning after sleeping 6 hours, you will feel like you slept 8. So if you use the link in my description, along with the code TRENDIFIER at checkout, that's very, very important. You will see a box that says promo code or some shit like that. You got to type in TRENDIFIER, TRENDIFIER. If you use that link along with that code at checkout, you will get $150 off your own 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover today, and you'll sleep just as well as I do. And by the way, if you want a full mattress, you can get the same product. It's an actual mattress, though, as well, called the 8 Sleep Pod Pro mattress. Same thing, $150 off using the code. You're going to love
it. There's the family that grew up with us. They were real close with my pop. You like their names, you mean?
No.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure if that was like someone you were related to.
No, they all played guitar together. They were just real close. They were like brothers and sisters.
So you lived with them?
For a little bit, yeah, while they were figuring out what they were doing. My dad kept getting kicked out of the house, My mom was getting fed up. So finally she, ended it, sold the house, and we moved we were moving to Clearwater, Florida. And then she picked Naples off the map. We ended up in Naples for the last 32 years. Yeah.
And so how old were you when you went down there?
I was about 14, 15. And I had I think a year of middle school, which is 8th grade. And then I went into 9th grade. And the education was way behind. So the bookwork was almost boring.
In Florida?
In Florida, yeah. Yeah, it was pretty. And
fucking Florida, man.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy how far behind I was. This is really easy. And the teachers were serious where I was from in Jersey. They would come snatch you up if you cut school. I used to be terrified of the truant officers. They would come, they'd find me. I'd hide in those salt barrels where they put out the salt. They had these big barrels on the 2nd floor in a storage room. I'd hide when they were coming.
To not go to school.
Find me. Yeah, I hated school. Yeah, I didn't like it. It was always hot, and when they put the heaters on it, and I was going through.
That's a first. Yeah. Why didn't you like school with the heaters, man?
Yeah, the heaters were killing me, and I was going through amazing growth spurts, and I was tired. I don't think nobody caught that. I was getting real big, real quick. And my mother used to take in every, stray, sad story and feed them all the same as me. And I'd be like, yo, I'm hungry. And I didn't want to say nothing. So I would, I got a job from these guys that were, connected in a rubbish removal company. And they gave me a good
Barone
job.
Sanitation?
Yeah, rubbish removal, they called it. And it was very, nice. Quick story about that. I got a job making $60 a day cash in the summer. I think I was 11.
At 11?
Yeah, at 11. Because
a lot of money back then.
Yeah, I wanted to have money in my pocket to get the extra things because I didn't want to say nothing to my mom. Hey, you're feeding all these. There were people down on their luck and stuff. So
that's pretty cool though that your mom did that.
She was a sweetheart. She'd pull people in. I mean, she helped a lot. All of them were there when she was dying. They all came down from New Jersey. Yeah, very good people. Half sisters, half brothers, a bunch of them over time.
Where would she find them?
Well, they'd be my sister's friends, or I had an oldest sister that was. They'd be her friends. Just people in the neighborhood. If they seen them abused or anything like that. My mom, for some reason, she was like a magnet for that. She gave away pretty much everything. She never tried to make money, but then she'd say, I need to make money. But she'd give it all away. But I remember them giving me that job, and I'm making the first day I got there, he goes, I'm going to give you $60 a day cash, and I'm going to buy you lunch. I was like, all right, cool. That sounds good. So we stopped at JJ's in Newark, and I ordered like 20 cheese dogs, 20 hot onions and mustard, 20 chili dogs, a bag of chips, RC Cola. And the next day I come in, he goes, I'm going to give you $100 a day of cash, and you buy your own damn lunch, And so I was like, wow, I must have did really good yesterday, I never caught the
didn't register.
Yeah, it didn't register. I always thought everybody was like, man, people treat me really good.
And what kinds of things were you doing for them?
I would pick up furnaces from them. Like, I was strong. And I would pick up these big cast iron pieces of furnaces in the basements, and whatever rubbish you had, I would throw it on this truck. We'd go to the Meadowlands and dump it, and I'd ride in the back of this truck on top of the load. Yeah, it was cool. Like, I really enjoyed it. You know what I mean? And
what family was this? Genovese, Gambino,
no,
Lucchese?
Nothing like that. Yeah, they were. I don't know if I should put their name out there. I don't know. I've told Mark. Yeah. Good people though for me. But I started noticing I was picking up on things, and that later in Florida caused me a lot of problems. The way they handled stuff and the way they did stuff. There was you ain't got no choice. This is what we're doing. And I didn't notice it till one day I was in Summit, New Jersey. We were doing a removal, and I go in to buy a tuna fish sandwich, and they charge me like $18 or something like that for a tuna fish sandwich.
Sounds about right for Summit.
Yeah. So my boss goes, he goes in there, he takes the sub and he slams it in their face, and he's like, how are you going to charge this kid $18 for a can of tuna? He starts going off and flipping out, and he starts taking stuff and giving it to me. Here, you can have this. You can have this. Give him his money back. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, He straightened that. I didn't have a problem with it. I wanted the tuna fish sandwich. Kind of mad when he threw it. Yeah, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. He's got like some... like that's all you got to do is just go in and start throwing stuff. I picked up on these things. It wasn't.
You're like 11, 12 years old.
Yeah, and I didn't know this at the time because I was 11 or 12, not developed. I'm picking these things up, and then later when they came out, I'm like, where did that come from? Oh yeah, that works. And I started becoming like a goon almost. And just doing whatever I wanted. And when there was an opposition, I did like him. I just went off. It was crazy. It's almost like being taken over, hijacked in the brain by your thoughts until you take time to process them and see where they came from. That's where I learned all that stuff. It was later on in life when I started realizing I'm not living. I'm kind of existing and reacting. You know what I mean? And that's all I do. And then I'm obsessing when I'm not doing that. So I'm not taking any time to give myself, and your worth gets diminished. The more you shut it down, the more you don't listen, like you're giving somebody else attention, but you're not giving yourself any attention, your worth goes down.
But you don't realize it.
Yeah. And it's almost to the point where you don't care if everything loses meaning eventually. And apathy is a horrible existence, like total apathy.
That's the word.
Yeah.
That's the perfect word.
Yeah.
And that's a good way for me to try to describe this and ask the question I have here. But like, I'm very obsessed with environments and how they shape us throughout life, but especially when you're growing up. Why is there more crime in places that have less money, for example? That's a broad one. It's kind of obvious. People got to survive, right? And they turn to whatever they can to do it.
Right.
And so there's a huge part of me that understands that. But when wherever your environment is, when you're in a rougher type of place where people, especially adults, handle things in rough ways. When you're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, your brain's firing all over the place. Right. You got you're going through your growth spurts, your hormones are coming out and everything. You're earning money for the first time in some cases if you're working young, and you're looking around to people to look up to. And so when you do this and you see, even if it doesn't register, it's just my thought here, when you see the apathy on their face, like that guy goes in there, he's like, give this kid a fucking tuna fish sandwich for $2, not 18. And you know what? We're going to take the rest of the store.
Right.
You're like, oh, okay. I guess that's what we do.
It's a lot better deal.
So then fast forward 15 years later, which I guess is what you're getting at.
Yeah.
If someone does something like that, whatever the parallel in the world is, or something not even parallel, something simple.
Right.
You're like, oh, I'm going to straighten this out.
Right.
You know, it's like it gets that apathy gets trained in you because apathy is a way of not feeling anything. It's just like, huh, okay. That's literally, I think that's like the definition.
Yeah.
You know, so it's curious to me that that's the word you chose there, but I think it's very telling.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It gives you a position of power too. Like apathy got to the point where I don't care if you die, I die. This is happening. And that didn't happen right away. But like I said, you whittle away at your worth over time. You keep getting told by the state or the government or whatever, you know, because you're doing wrong things. But you're getting told this underlying thing that you're getting a life sentence. You're not going to make it, you know. And that happened to me in that first year I had in high school. I get down there.
To Florida.
Yeah, I did really good in sports. You know, sports I excelled in. Was getting looked at by schools, and at the end of the year, I had just won everything there was to win in wrestling, and you know, and my coach goes, "We're not going to have a team next year." I said, "Coach, I'm a freshman. I'm varsity wrestling. I'm varsity football. So I got 3 more years." He goes, "You'll be in prison next year." And I was
the coach
like,
said that.
Yeah. Now I thought he was like, I laughed it off. I was like, what? I never even did a chart. You know, I never did a crime, and it was just funny to me. But at the end of the summer, I was in prison, and I was like, wow, that guy was like a prophet. At 15, yeah, I got sentenced as an adult. Yeah.
What happened?
I'd like to say it was a misunderstanding, but the judge, when I told the truth. My uncle was a lawyer up here, a big lawyer, and his partner still has a practice in Newark, and they had 2 in New York. And when he passed, he was like, you know, attorney general or whatever. He was really high up there. He was doing these ironclad indictments overseas for drug cartels and stuff. So once he wrote these up, they had him do that. He was like a specialist at it.
Oh, so he ended up working with the government.
I believe so. Yeah, at the end there, it was unexpected death at St. Barnabas. But I talked to him because he knew this stuff, and he goes, "Yeah, just tell him the truth. You know, this guy started it." And
what happened?
Well, I had been loitering and prowling, what they call in Florida, is when you're walking through a business area or something. And so I left the girl's house kind of late. I didn't want to get her in trouble, so I didn't say what I was doing. I just said, "I'm going home. My house is over there." I used to get lost in Naples because the same road is like 5 different places. And so I'm walking the beeline right to my house, and I go behind these businesses, and these cops roll up on me. And he's like, "You're loitering and prowling." I said, "I'm walking home." I said, I don't know what that is, loitering and prowling. But
prowling? I've never heard this one.
Yeah, it's something they make up to.
Sounds Florida.
Yeah. It was very redneckish when I was there. And it took me a while I used to say I hate Florida. I'm from Jersey. But I hated, I didn't hate Jersey, but I hated my environment. It was rough, you know what I mean? And I love the people, and this is what I come to find over the time is I loved connections with people. Now, I would have never known that or admitted that when I was growing up. But I had some strong, good people in my life. Always, somewhere, I always had these solid, good people. Tons of people around.
Like who, besides your mom?
Well, my mom wasn't one of them. She was always my cheerleader, defender, but I never opened up to her. But I had friends from East Orange and Newark and that were just tight. They went through hard times. A lot of them, one parent would die, something would happen to them. And I clicked with these people. And then even when I got to Florida, I clicked with a certain type of people that was just looking to live not so rigid, Nobody tells you what to do, that type of thing. And I bonded with people like that, And some of them were really good people. I wouldn't, name them or nothing, but good people and stand-up people that wouldn't snitch if they were facing 100 years, that type of, yeah. And, not all of them. Some of them betrayed and did what they did. But so I lost a little bit of my point when I was going there.
We were starting on, you were pulled over for loitering.
Oh, yeah.
And
So I'm
prowling.
walking behind this building. Yeah, it's a business. And I said, I don't know what loitering and prowling is. I'm walking home, and I tried to walk away, and there might have been a few more words, but I was pretty much like, dude, get out of my face. You know what I mean? Like, not what a 15-year-old should have said to an authority, but I really thought he was out of place, even running up on me like that. I never did nothing wrong, that I got caught for.
Yeah.
But, just kid stuff, And so I try to walk away, and he grabs the back of my shirt and like yanks me back, and he's like, "You don't go nowhere." But when he did that, I just spun around and hit him in the jaw.
Oh, you whacked the cop.
Yeah. I spontaneously combusted, I guess. Yeah.
He get knocked out?
Broke his jaw. I had to pay for his hospital bills. Yeah.
Oh,
it was
Jesus.
not good. Yeah. I
Now,
was
there was
15,
another
but I
cop
was
there, right?
6'4", 6'5", 315 pounds. Yeah, they all jumped on me. They beat me up. They broke a tooth. Yeah, or two, I forget. But not then. But right then, I hit the guy and I ran. I went home. And then I showed up in my house, and I was like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And my mother was just like, she was showing up to court. I had grounds. But at that time, when I look back on it now, every single parent with a kid, they didn't want that in Naples, Florida. They were really not helpful. You know what I mean? The whole thing was set up to get you out of there, and not be there. And
Yeah, it wasn't like because you came from at least like some pretty rough neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Up north, but
Yeah.
Naples was never really.
No, it's a beautiful place,
Yeah.
very nice. But the cops are like gangsters. You know what I mean? The cops at that time were on the take for, they were just they were well taken care of to keep their community the way it is.
Got it.
Yeah, and I wasn't the best. I had a lot of entitlement, I guess, to like the same rights as you, but for them that was disrespect and stuff like that. It was
It's also profile too.
Profile,
You're a
yeah.
6'4", 200-some pound, 15-year-old from Newark, New Jersey.
yeah.
We don't like your kind down
Nah,
here.
we don't want you around. Yeah,
And then you knock a cop out.
yeah, that was not good. And then when I got to prison, because I had, they sent me to
They
prison.
sent you to prison for that.
Yeah, as an
With
adult.
adults?
Yeah, they sent me as
At
sentenced-
15?
At 15, they sentenced me as an adult.
How long?
5.5 years.
5.5 years at 15 in state prison.
Yeah, and my mother was like crying. It was
Yeah, I'll bet.
terrible. Yeah, and she was in the background when I was taking the sentence, and the judge. I said, Your Honor, I said 5.5 years for a fight, and they go, and the judge says, yeah, good luck, son. And I said, yeah, thanks, Dad. I was so blown away that I was like, is this even real? And
How do you even process that? I mean, I can't imagine processing that at like 40 or 50 or at 20, something like that. But 15?
yeah, it was. I tell you, it's kind of like camp for me though. Like when I went there, yeah, it kind of lined up with I kind of seemed cool. You know what I mean? There was another kid in the jail that was same thing as me. His father died in the Bronx. His mom moved him down, and we clicked, and we met up in the county jail, and I just got sentenced. He wrote me, like, I felt like, and when I came out too, I felt like, kind of like, cool. Yeah, it was weird. And now I wouldn't, but I did. I remember at the time feeling like, everybody thinks I'm pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like you're hard. And at that age,
Right.
I can see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and at that age too, like a year later, I was in there. I got a nurse as a girlfriend, so I had like everything
In the prison.
Yeah. I met this guy. He smashed the tip of my finger. I smashed the tip of the finger off. He laughed at me, and I was growing habaneros, so I bashed his eye, cut it open, and shoved the habaneros in it because he laughed at me. You know what I mean? And so I went to the nurse every day, and they would give me sponge baths because they were worried because I was still a minor, but I'm as an adult. They're worried about me, getting infected because the bone was showing. I took 2 of these cinder blocks, and I was all into my garden. I had a horticulture class I was taking.
You were growing a garden in the
Yeah, I was
prison?
growing a garden. Yeah, yeah.
In
And
the cell?
and at the same time, I was collecting for these other guys that couldn't collect.
Is this like an indoor kind of
outdoor?
like?
It's outdoor, but
you had it
the
outdoor.
prison's real big. Yeah, you had like a field of grass. You were allowed to work on a little patch.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah. It was something.
All right.
I'll tell you, I got more vocationals that I can count. None of them that did me any good. But what it did was it distracted me. Like jails and prisons were made for you to sit with yourself.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a good idea. Let's educate them. I got my GED. You know, I got like a perfect score. I got my little hat on. I took a picture. I sent it to my mom. She still got it. She had it on the wall. You know, they use a background like so you don't look like you're in prison. And you would think all these are good things like reform, but the problem is it's just like when you see people out here in the world. You give them education, you give them ability to make money, but inside they're not whole, and they cause like mass destruction. Like I know kids that tap into resources that they shouldn't have, and they get themselves in those elements where you can get your legs broke, and they have no idea why they're in those elements, and it's because of their ability to tap into things. I came from a position of not able to tap into nothing, so immediately I started collecting in prison for other people, and I would collect and I would get paid for that.
What do you mean collect?
So if a guy was doing drugs, I never did drugs at this point. And, you know, and they didn't pay, which happens sometimes, you know, I would go collect it. And I would get it to the guy and the guy would look out for me. Now I like doing my little class because I wasn't obsessing. I didn't know this at the time, but I was getting freedom from, that constant agitation in my brain. Which I later identified as obsession. But at the time, nobody's telling me nothing. Anybody that comes with a solution, I bat them down because I feel like they know too much, you know, and I didn't like that. So too familiar, you know what I mean? So I did my little garden thing, but when that kid exposed me and he's like, because I mulched two things together and I was pretty proud of it. And I said something. The kid made fun of me. That's the kid I split his eye.
And this is that apathy coming in.
Yeah.
Like, this is what you do. If someone makes fun of you, okay, I'm going to beat the fuck out of you.
Yeah.
Just stand there.
And then I go back to my plant, you know what I mean? So, but he never said it again, you know what I mean?
I'll bet he didn't.
Yeah. He had to deal with that, you know?
You put a habanero in his eye, too?
I split them, and then I shoved the habaneros in there, and they were hot. They were fresh.
Nice touch.
Yeah. I knew, but see, the hurt I gave him was the hurt I was feeling. Yeah, it sounds crazy, but I was this, I guess you would call it like hypersensitive. This one literature I read that I learned a lot from talked about hypersensitivity. I was like, oh, I don't feel anything. And that's not the truth. I learned to kill the expression of those feelings and not be seen for those feelings, but I was still ruled by them. So I would just smash something. You know, that kicks in the fight or flight. Mine was apathy for, I don't care if I die. I will not feel this. And that grew into something really, really dangerous. Yeah, almost out of my control a bunch of times, yeah.
It's kind of like, though, you've heard expressions like this before, probably from, usually like in gangster culture or something like that. Right. But when you get into the system so young, that's your college.
Yeah.
You go to college there.
Yeah.
You ironically also got your GED there and everything, but in reality, you're in a state prison with a bunch of hardened criminals at 15.
Right.
You shouldn't have done what you did, but I mean, you turned around and punched a guy. This wasn't a reaction, whatever. This isn't like the fact that the judge looked at you and said it that way, the way you described it, like, best of luck to you, son, or whatever.
Yeah.
I really struggle with that kind of thing because even though sentencing and things like that in the criminal system, it's always going to be so weird. Like the concept of like someone has to complete a amount of time in like another place where they're not allowed to leave. It's so bizarre. But I think about the humanity of it that's missing sometimes. Like you have a 15-year-old in front of you. Mm-hmm. All right. Your balls apparently had dropped because you were leaving a chick's house, but barely, right? Like they dropped a couple years ago, and you were probably earlier than most people.
Right.
There's all these things going on in your head. Right. You have no criminal history, and a judge looks at you and goes, "Yeah, 5 years."
Yeah.
That to me, I understand that in the courts and in the legal system, there has to be a ton of objectivity. It's what they teach, apparently. I don't know. I didn't go there, but that's what I hear they teach in law school. I get that, but there's still a human element, you know. And so he sends you, good luck, son, to a college that's not of your choice,
Right.
and while you're going through the rest of your developmental phase, you're doing it around all these other bad people, and then you learn to react. I think you said react instead of respond, which I like. You learn to react to the impetuses around you
Right.
by shielding all this stuff, such that, you know, instead of being like, hey, I don't like that person made fun of me, and dealing with that and then trying to talk it out with them. I mean, we're talking like 5-year-olds right now.
Right.
But this is the idea. You don't learn this.
Right.
You're like, I'm gonna smash your face real quick. Oh, I don't feel that anymore. We're good.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
straightened
because of where you are. You might not, even though you might have had some proclivities towards being more physical with people because of your jobs when you were 10, 11 and the guys you saw,
Right.
you may have very well not developed that if you had a chance to just be a normal kid.
Right.
Take it out on the football field.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't sit right with me that happened to you.
Yeah, I'm not like I might have been a victim at that point, but I carried that not knowing it and the resentment towards the police and, you know, any authority. But I learned pretty quickly that you're a volunteer after a certain period of time.
What do you mean by that?
Like if I re-sign up to that, which I did, and that's what caused me, you know, to go to prison three more times. I was coming from a victim mentality almost, you know, like, I was done wrong, you know what I mean? And I did do something wrong. Like, so, and then I definitely reinforced that with drug use and legitimately doing some bad things, you know? But I learned that I was volunteering for that because I still didn't take time to process. It wasn't until I got on death row, and it wasn't because I murdered anybody or nothing. I was just deemed incorrigible by Florida. And yeah,
we'll get there.
Yeah. So it wasn't until then that I started reflecting and giving myself an opportunity. I all of a sudden I realized I need to get some kind of connection with myself. I have no idea who I am, what I'm doing. And I don't want to be in here for life. There's only, you know, it's just not a life.
Were you thinking that at all? I don't want to be in here again when you were 18, 19, 20?
No.
Ready to get out?
No, those were my most impressionable years. So what I left with 15 when I went to go in there, it was stuck in my head for a long time. What was great, you know, and I relived that. Like I got all that stuff and I'm like, this ain't really it. You know, what I thought at 15, I kind of held on to the ideas I had at that time, at my most impressionable time, like getting with the nurse, getting stuff brought in. Every time I did something like dangerous or illegal, I was in the moment. And I didn't know that that's what I liked. That's what I liked. I liked the hyper awareness of being in the moment, because I lived in my head everything else.
So even when you were like in prison and you're going around and you're collecting money and stuff like that, it gives you a purpose, and you kind of know, like, all right, we're not supposed to be doing this, but I'm the guy that gets to do it.
Yeah, stuff like that. That was kind of condoned. I'm talking more like the paying guards, taking over prisons, getting kicked out of prisons, which is crazy. But I've got shifted from prisons before because I was just, I was. There wasn't nothing I couldn't sit back and take time to just start running. You know, if I really look at it, we were talking about it the other day. A friend of mine, he doesn't like his name being brought up. So but we were talking about it the other day, how if you sit back for a year and observe any environment, you can know pretty much the way you want to do it to take over. You know your biggest problem. You got to get that taken care of first, and then the rest will kind of fall into place.
You know what's funny though? Like, think about that. I do. I think about this a lot, but think about that from the perspective of, on one hand, the laser good CEO of public company X or whatever, who works his way up, and as he's getting up, starts to see like, okay, here's how, or better yet, starts the whole company.
Right.
Here's where we're at. Here's how we get to that kind of thing, and here's how we're gonna change the business environment for whatever the product is, right?
Right.
In 10 years.
Right.
And they have that vision. And then if they're great, they figure it out, they change the game, and then they're huge, right?
Right.
It's no different even like being in a prison. You're like, okay, well, I'm here. This is my environment.
Right.
How do I run the prison?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's just one is in a forbidden place of society, right? And another is in the, oh yeah, that's what happens every day.
Right.
But it's the same human thing.
Yeah, I believe it's easier in a controlled environment, and you know the rundown within a certain amount of time, and then knowing the individuals takes a little longer. A couple thousand people running around, you got to make sure, there's whole sections of people you could just kind of discount as they'll go along with anything. But and then the guards individually getting to know each one a little bit, without bringing suspicion to talking to them, but just finding out, seeing where they're weak at. And yeah, it was a crazy game. But when you got 24/7 to work on it, you could, yeah, you're not doing nothing else. So all I did was work out, read books, and study people. And just to get the creature comforts of the streets, because it was actually easier living in there. I used to feel like I disappointed everybody with my lack of connection with people and stuff like that. Like, I learned to be charismatic and go along with stuff, but it baffled me, how much trouble I would get in and how much it would hurt my family members. I'm like, what? I got this under control. Don't worry about it. Like that type of, I didn't understand how they got so wrapped up in what I'm doing, and especially when I was providing results, later when it got
money.
When it got really messy, I couldn't do anything right. I understood then. And then on the flip side of that, when I had a daughter, that's when it really hit me. I was like, I got to change, Can't have a bunch of people like me running around.
Yeah.
And
something changes inside you. Where you're like protection mode.
Right. Yeah, you just start looking at things different. Yeah.
But you did it was 5.5 years?
Mm-hmm. Well, I did a little extra time. I broke another guard's jaw in there.
Oh, what happened there?
He was making remarks about me hitting a cop, and he thinks he's a tough guy. It was almost when I first got there. They tacked on 2 more years. So I was about, 20, 22 when I got out, something like that.
Got it. So you get out after a stint. Now you've spent like almost a third of your life in your,
at that point,
the developmental years of your going into adulthood.
Right.
In prison. So what was your plan coming out?
I knew I was going to learn to live without the law being involved in my life. Like that was kind of my resentment. I didn't really have any personal grudge. I didn't do too bad. I made some money in there. My mom, I was able to send her stuff for her birthday. And so I didn't really hold on to nothing that I knew of. But I did have this inward idea that I don't mess with cops or anything to do with government or none of that. And they don't, they don't come in my life either. And that didn't go so well. but I would, I just started building up a big like fear factor for cops messing with me. You know what I mean? And it just got out of control. I started getting indicted for murders I didn't do. But I was creating this persona myself. So
what were you doing?
I was just hanging with, like I said, a good friend of mine. He was on escape from Rahway up here, and he got a girl pregnant, so he wanted to go turn himself back in up here. And
what do you mean turn himself back in?
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to.
Yeah, he wasn't going to turn himself back in. He was going to wait till he caught him. But his daughter ended up becoming my goddaughter. She's doing well now, but
having a kid. Back to prison.
Yeah, I got to go back to prison.
Yeah, I can't deal with this shit.
Yeah, it was tragic. Both of them, the mom and the dad, are dead now, but it was tragic the way that went down. But from the time I got out till, in and out of bids, this guy stuck with me, and he was a thorough, solid dude for me. But society would probably deem him a maniac.
What kinds of things were you guys doing for money?
Well, he would do burglaries, and I never did burglaries. It made me feel, I didn't like stealing. When I was a kid, I did it because it got me in the moment. But I learned it made me feel like I had to go to the bathroom because I just didn't feel good. Like I had to take a shit. Yeah. I'd be like, this doesn't feel right. You do this, and I would rob people and just let them know I did it.
Oh, so
Yeah.
if you could see him, you'd do it. If you couldn't see him,
Yeah. Like I wanted you to know, not really me, because sometimes I'd have some, I don't know how much I should say about that, but I would have like like I looked like I was there to confiscate your stuff and you weren't going to do anything about it. And I found that robbing, people who dealt drugs, I thought you could never get in trouble for that. Turns out you can.
oh, so you would rob drug dealers?
Yeah. I learned.
Oh, this
real
is some
quick.
Omar Little shit right here.
Omar Little. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, long before I watched that show, which is funny.
The Wire. We're
Yeah,
talking
The
about
Wire.
for people listening.
Right. And long before that show, though, I was in Naples, Florida, which is really nice. I would go to Miami. I ended up going into East St. Louis. I ended up going to all these places, and I would find out real quick people didn't like people. You know what I mean? And I'd find out who you didn't like if they had a lot of stuff. And I started feeding a drug supply too. Like I was doing drugs at the time. I started doing drugs when I was I started doing drugs with him. Actually, I started getting into hardcore, drugs and stuff. And it helped. It helped kill the conscience.
What kind of drugs?
I mean, it got pretty bad. Heroin, cocaine. I wasn't a weed smoker because it left me defenseless against my brain, and I'd hate it. I'd just be like a fat blob I was like, my brain wants to kill me, and I can't do nothing about it. But opiates, I discovered I got stabbed a couple times, and they gave me these red things. I don't even know what they were at the time, but I remember feeling like this is where I want to be. And before that, when I was like about 8, I think I was like 7, right before my dad hurt himself, I used to steal sips of his little Budweisers. I bring him one. And it was total relief. I was like, wow, that's weird. So I started bringing him like empty cans. He'd be like, what happened? I'd be like, I spilt it. I don't know what happened. So he started getting his own beers. But but yeah, it was. I didn't pick up on it, but what it did was totally relieve the pressure of being me.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was under so much pressure. I really didn't live up to much. You know what I mean?
You don't?
No, I don't. I'd never really picked up on why that was.
I mean, I'm guessing here. I'm not you, but
Okay.
I would think, just from like a human being perspective,
Right.
you come out of prison after 5 years.
Right.
You didn't get to do high school. You didn't get to do college. You're labeled a felon by society. Like you have a distrust of government and police and things like that. Some of it very righteously so.
Right.
And so you're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's
Maybe
a reaction.
that was part of it, but this was back when I was 7. I had this pressure.
Oh,
yeah.
you were actually talking about that. I missed that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't pick up on it, but when I was about 3 or 4, my dad taught me how to play chess, and I thought this is a good way for us to bond or whatever. Subconsciously, I played chess like every day, every night down in the parks. I would play with old timers, and I started winning a lot. And one night I was like ready to play him and try to beat him. He came home, he was drunk, and he was kind of like sleeping on the table. And I was like, this shit don't work. And I kind of threw away the trophies and everything I won. I won like statewide tournaments. And I was like, it wasn't for the chess. It was this pressure to live up to what I already had. My pop, you know what I mean? He didn't not love me or nothing like that. But I thought I had to like super perform or something. And I'm fighting for something that's already there. And that weird thing, I have no idea where that came from. I just recognized it through this one fellowship I was going to. I was like, that's what that is. That pressure is obsession. And then when I compulsively act on it, I do a lot of crazy stuff. And then I seem to not be able to stop. And this is with using drugs. This is long before I even picked up drugs as a thing.
So when you did pick up drugs, though, you were saying it took away the pressure of being yourself.
Yeah, I was less dangerous. I was less
You're less dangerous on cocaine?
Yeah, cocaine would make me very calm.
What?
Yeah, it would make me very calm. I would talk to people. I used to use cocaine. I'd snort cocaine with people all night to find out if they were a snitch. This is when I first started doing it. And I loved talking and grilling them. Just finding out little hidden, contradictions. I'm like, wait a minute. Go back to this part right here. Kind of like what you do here. Yeah. And so I would do that because I started getting snitched on by people. I couldn't believe it. Like, I would help people buy their apartments. You know, dude, I did some nice things. My whole point behind selling drugs was to help my friends and family.
Oh, so you were selling it too right away?
Right when I came out, yeah, I had all these connections from prison. I looked cool from the environment. Naples is a very nice, rich place, but I would go into the hoods and get stuff and bring it over. And
because you were also protecting people in prison who were selling it, you said,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So you had
yeah.
connections through that. And
Right.
then when you got out, it's like, okay, well, there's a market for this.
yeah, it was like you said, the school to learn how to pretty much be a criminal. You know what I mean? I didn't stop doing that for a long time, but until I started, like I said, I had my daughter. I started caring about people. I was like, man, I can't be condoning this at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rob all the drug dealers. I'm going to use all the drugs. So I became like a garbage can for all the drugs out there. I was just going to use them all. No more making money off of it.
Can I get a little bit of a timeline here? Because there's a
Okay.
few things there. So you came out, you
yeah.
were at first were selling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have a daughter.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not at that time.
But I'm
yeah.
saying like when?
Yeah.
When? Like after
Oh,
that.
this is 98 and 99.
And how old are you?
I'm at that time, let's see, 26.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had you been back to jail yet?
Uh,
Or prison?
I was I actually met my daughter in prison at a work release center.
Right, but I'm saying when you, this was a girlfriend, I guess you got pregnant? Or your wife?
Yeah, I was in a rehab and I got a girl pregnant. They actually.
All right, we skipped a few things.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
go back
yeah,
then.
okay.
So you came out, you were selling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then at some point you were like, I think you were saying it was when your daughter was born. That's when you were like, no, I'm just going to rob drug dealers.
Well, a little after that.
Little
after
after.
that, because after her, I started caring. Like, I knew there shouldn't be people thinking like me. So I was like, I got to change. And then when I started doing that, I started caring about things I refused to care about before because it was too intense for me.
In the middle, though, that's
Yeah.
what I'm looking for. So
Okay.
in the middle of those two things, your daughter's at 26 or whatever and is born like when you actually went to prison. We'll get there. But
Yeah.
in the middle, come out, you're selling drugs. Before that, you got addicted to drugs at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you were you a part of like a organization or were you just selling like a one-man army kind of deal?
No, I affiliated with a bunch of. At one time, they labeled me an international gang leader, which I thought was ridiculous. I'd never been in a gang, so, but I had a bunch of different people that I dealt with. So I never was prejudiced or I never cared. Like if I'm trying to get something done, I'll use whoever's there, and I don't matter. So it looked like I was coordinating with a lot of different types of people, and
Where'd you get the stuff from?
Miami, mostly Miami. Yeah, we West Palm Beach too. We had a connection there for a while, but Miami at the time, I actually ended up moving over there because it made it easier. And I had my daughter at one time. Every time I had my daughter, I stopped doing everything, and I tried to do good. But my ideas of what good is, they grew. They started somewhere, but they
Well-
weren't great.
How'd you end up in rehab?
Oh,
That's the question.
Yeah, so I end up in this. I got to the point where, so I'm out a couple years, and I get on these drugs. Immediately, I go to, mainlining drugs. After like 6 months, all of a sudden, I found the answer. I just do this stuff, and I'm fine. I don't have to deal with emotions or all that complicated stuff. I could just get things done. I end up, of course, this thing turns its back on me because I'm using it 24/7 eventually. But what happened was the reason why I started dealing was my friend that I told you that came from the Bronx, that was in jail with me before. He stayed in touch with me, so I put him on, and I put a bunch of other guys on, and I started feeling a good connection with a bunch of good people. And then I started hooking them up with people.
Making them money too.
Right.
Yeah.
So 2:00 in the morning, this guy comes to my house, and his nose is running. He's like, "Hey, I need an 8-ball." I was like, "You using this stuff?" At that point, I hadn't used nothing. And I said, "No, we don't use this. We sell it. We, take care of our families. We do what we got to do, but you don't use it." And he's like, no, I just need it. So anyway, I end up using with him. We were going over to Lauderdale at the time. Club Boca. We were going at the time. It was a big 3-story club. And we had all these ex-Seminole football players with the brand that, just got our back. And it felt pretty good. And I'm in there with, some whatever. And we're going back and forth, and I'm bringing him over there. I start doing bumps, and like 6 months later, I'm mainlining stuff. When my boy came down from Rawways from Jersey City, he's like banging all the time. I'm like, yeah, I'll never stick a needle in my arm. There ain't no way, you know. And about 2 weeks later, I'm in Coconut Grove, and in Coconut Grove they got a street called Grand. There's a line where you go from Hollywood people to the ghetto, and I'm in this hotel that's looking down that strip, and I'm with this girl, and I'm doing like lines of heroin pretty big. And
you're doing lines of heroin at this point?
At this point, I'm doing lines of heroin and coke, pretty big. And she's doing this little bit, and she's putting it in her spoon and little bit, and she's like blasted. And I'm like, I don't even feel this yet. I had got my tolerance went through the roof. And so
you're also like 6'5", 6'6", something like that? How tall are you?
6'5". Yeah, 6'5".
Big dude.
Yeah, at that time I was about 330. Yeah, I was like, benching a lot and whatever. But I was strong, and I couldn't feel nothing. It got to where my tolerance was just ridiculous. I mean, it was like a $4,000 or $5,000 a day habit.
Wow.
And I don't know how I was keeping that up. I mean,
you were selling.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. But I constantly shot these speedballs. But this girl, she did this little bit, and she was just like blasted. I was like, look that up. You know what I mean? She's like, you sure? And I was like, yeah. I said, my buddy does it all the time.
The needle.
Yeah. And she blasted me, and I like grabbed her by the shoulder, poor girl. And I'm like, uh-oh, the building's moving. And I don't know how appropriate this is. You might.
No, this is what happens when you do crazy drugs.
Yeah. So
you're not trying to do anything. It's just, this is why you shouldn't do them. Right here.
Definitely. Yeah. Train running through my head. And so I was hooked right there. And then I realized you could do a lot. You get a lot more done when you get those kind of, well, I don't know. It's confusing. But so I started finding a perfect way to suit my crazy brain, what I called it at the time, a brain that wouldn't turn off and stuff like that. That took care of that, and then I get to do whatever I want. Now, the problem is I had that freedom. I was doing what I thought was making me happy, but when that freedom ran out from that and the noise got louder and louder because I kept doing more and more, seemingly crazy things, I actually practiced insanity enough to become insane, to where I was diagnosed with like things and stuff like that. I practiced that, so I had to try to refocus and slow it down. So I ended up in this rehab. Yeah.
That's a pretty wild line that you said in there. I had to practice insanity long enough to become insane. You started to explain that a little bit, but can you expand upon that some more?
Yeah. Well, I learned from coming out of that I had to practice sane actions to get back to being restored to sanity. I had to, common sense things that I thought I knew, but I never applied because I knew them intellectually and I didn't apply them. I just assumed I was doing them. And it actually forms like it's a derangement of sorts when I upset the working order of my mind. And that's what I did. I practiced something that was out of my nature for so long that I became deranged.
Drugs, in this case, were at the center of it.
Yeah, they were the relief. The real insanity was practicing things. I was running away from fears I didn't even know I had. So
through like crime type things.
Through crime, yeah, through getting in the moment, through just crazy. It took crazy things to happen for me to feel alive. And it was all just a feeling. There was nothing produced by it. So that was the insanity, that I need just one more thing to go back in my head and live and be at peace for a second more. But then the brain kind of turned its back on me and said, this is unacceptable. Not one more thing is going to work. And that's when I started getting really fearful. I transmitted a lot of fear. That was another thing you brought up earlier, was how I reacted was just me trying to keep my fear down.
Yeah. It's like that thing. It's the same thing like people, what's the quote? people express their insecurities by taking it out on you or something like that?
Yeah.
Same deal.
Yeah. But what I didn't know was that you transmit that fear to somebody else. And that, because I used to get some crazy reactions sometimes when I go at somebody, and I thought they were like terrified of me, but they were really what they were doing was feeling the fear inside of me. And it's a theory that I came up with. It's just my experience. It's not it might have been something I read, but it's integrated in me that you transmit what's inside of you to people when you show up or anything. Now, if they have preconceived judgments, they go along with whatever, like preconceived notions when you show up of what it's going to be. That
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a bias, but you pretty much transmit who you are to people. Like I used to get a lot of good girlfriends that were beyond me. Why I would get them, it's because they felt secure around me. I put off a lot of you're safe, but the first line I would tell them was, you're probably gonna get shot hanging out with. I used to say stuff like that and they'd go right up under me, and I'd be like, man, I can't get rid of this girl. You know, I left one at my mom's house for like a month one time. I was in Miami. I came back.
You left her at your mom's house?
Yeah, and I was like, you're still here? And she was ready to shoot at me. But I couldn't believe she was still there. You know what I mean? I ran from the house, jumped in a car, didn't come back for a month. I said I'd be back the next day or something. She didn't want me to go. She actually was trying to save my life, but I took it as you're trying to hinder what I'm doing. Yeah.
But the girl who you were in the hotel room with and you tried shooting up for the first time.
Right.
That's what got you hooked on that.
Yeah.
And you're what, like 24 or something like that?
Yeah, I was about 20. Yeah, about 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this then is what really spiraled it to addictive, crazy use, because once you go to the needle, it's a whole new level.
Oh, it's a whole addiction in and of itself. Yeah.
And what made you go to, I can't remember if you said this or not, there's been a lot, but what made you go to rehab at 26?
At, let's see, that was 1998. Yeah, it was about 26. I ended up in this rehab. Let me see. I was wanted for something. I ended up going to this Job Corps in Kentucky, and they actually flew me up there, and I was wanted for something. I was about 24 and a half, 25, and it was kind of like a break for me to go to this place.
What was it, a Job Corps?
A Job Corps, they called it. They taught me how to operate heavy equipment. It's it's a vocational thing, but it's on a federal, reserve, and yeah, and I'm wanted. They flew me out of Naples, which was great. And I was like, yeah, you'll take me? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, cool. So I go on there because my girlfriend at the time talked me into it, and she went too, and she became a successful, whatever you call it, administration person or whatever. And me, I started, I met the pizza guy. I had drugs coming in underneath the pizza. I couldn't stop, And so eventually I got kicked out of there. They tried to put me on like mental medication for bipolar or something. And they really tried. They were trying to help me out. So they put me on a bus. I go back to Naples. Now I'm wanted.
And what are you wanted for?
At that time it was dealing in a school zone. I put a friend of mine up. Yeah, they made it sound like I was peddling to kids or something. It was just some school that was within 1,000 feet. It was 2:00 in the morning. No kids at school, but they set me up in this school zone. I put a kid up that he got thrown out of his mother and father's house. So I put him up in this hotel. He sets me up. He calls me up. He's like, I need this. And I was like, you don't need anything. Just sit tight. Your hotel's paid for. So you don't need nothing. Just calm down and try to act right, because his parents were nice people. And so he insists that he makes some money, so I'm not just paying his tab. And I had a weird feeling about it, and I knew it was a setup. So anyway, I got another guy to hand him the stuff, and I told the guy, I said, look, this might be a setup.
Oh, you told him that?
Yeah, I told the dude, and he didn't care. He just wanted to make some money. I was like, you could do it or you could not do it. I totally understand either way. But, he says he's got all this cash there and whatever. I'm not touching nothing, but I will fight with you, in and out of this. And he knew I was serious, So we got in, we got out. And I kept getting calls for more. And I was like, nah. And at this time, I had like I guess one of my first awakenings is I kind of knew I was going to go away for that. And I just knew something was telling me I was on borrowed time. So a friend of mine, I said, hey, get me a job at your thing. He was a manager at a super grocery store. I said, get me a job. I don't care what it is. I said, I want a job. I want to work and do what's right. So I put some money up and I start working this job. And this poor guy, he's like the manager of this place. He wears a suit. He's very into this career. And next thing you know, I'm on the bleach aisle, putting bleach up, and there's like 20 officers coming this way, 20 officers coming this way. They couldn't get me to do anything else, so they just came and picked me up on the deal in the school zone. So that was what I was wanted for. I was on bond.
Oh, you were on bond.
Yeah, I got on bond for that.
Skipped or something.
Yeah, I skipped. Yeah, and so they were looking for me and everything else. So, Naples, Florida will indict you for a petty theft if you're in Australia. They don't care. They will get you here, and they're going to get theirs. They don't care if it costs them $1 million. They're coming to get you. So I get robbed. I get back to Naples. There's a crazy story with that too, but
let's hear it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm coming back. It was the last Freaknik. It was 1997. You know Freaknik down in Georgia, Atlanta.
No. What's this?
It was a big college party. I don't even know how to say it right. I just know it's like Freaknik or something like that. But anyway, you can look it up. It was a big party. So all of I-75 was backed up. I'm on a Greyhound bus. 3 girls in a convertible Mustang or something are pulling up alongside of the bus. I'm like banging on the window. I was like, I want to go with you guys. And they're like, come on. So I just told the bus driver, it was gridlock traffic on I-75.
If you are looking to search the web privately and not have all these websites track you when you leave, check out my friends over at Privado VPN. Privado is the best VPN company because it gives you all of the privacy, loses you none of the speed, and allows you to use the VPN on multiple devices at one time. So if you hit the link in my description for Privado, you will go to my landing page with Privado and you will see a plan for $4.99 a month. It is fantastic. It's the same one I use. You'll get all your privacy with all your speed, and you can use it on any device at any time. So check it out.
So I was like, I'm going with them. I was like, let me off. And I had like about a half pound of this crippy weed that I got from the pizza guy up in Kentucky.
Huh, nice.
Yeah. And I'm on a Greyhound because they were going to.
Got a half pound.
Yeah, half pound. And
nice.
it turns out in Atlanta, they loved, so I got coke, I got heroin. I'm just breaking off little buds. Everybody's giving me stuff. I end up taking these 3 college girls down. They're like, we want to go wherever you're going. They thought I was like, Naples is not like this. This is awesome. Naples like a dead town. We got like parties in people's houses. And she's like, no, we'll drive you down there. And they drove me down there. Actually, we lost one of the girls, but
What do you mean you lost one of the girls?
I don't know. She just disappeared over the weekend.
She's disappeared.
Yeah. They said her 2 friends. I was like, you ain't worried about your friend? I was like, I don't know where she is. And they're like, nah, she disappears all the time. I was like, all right. So I end up in this really wild situation. I get back to Naples. A friend of mine who's wanted by the feds at that time, he was about to go away for 8 years. I didn't know this. But he gives me the keys to his apartment. He's like, it's too hot for me in Naples. I got to get out of here. I end up, as soon as I got there was a big party, a house party. And these real estate guys I know, they're real estate guys now, but they used to come out and party with us all the time. And they got this nice house, big party. I show up there. A friend of mine's there. I bring these 3 girls. They're like, I knew it. I knew you were holding out on it. I said, look, it ain't normally like this. We just, we got lucky. We go in there, we're partying, everybody's having a good time. Then my boy gives me the keys to this place. It's in a rich part of town. The guy who owns it left him the keys to that and told him he has to run the boat. Once a week, he wants his motor being run or whatever. So
house watching, basically.
Yeah, house watching. And the guy didn't care. So, and there's a credit card there for the gas. And it was like, and they're like, the girls are like, I knew you were holding, I kept saying it really is never like this. I was like, man, I must be dying soon or something because everything was just going too smooth. So we end up partying the whole weekend and I'm riding this boat. I almost took my buddy's head off. I never rode a boat before, yeah. I told him to duck. We were going on this bridge, but the girl disappeared. We end up eating all this, good food.
She might have been in the motor.
Yeah, we might have lost her out there.
Little bump in the water right there.
Took her head off. Yeah, but so we end up back at this house. We're partying all night, and my friend who had a wife at the time that had she must have had a transponder in his neck or something. She always found him. I was like, there's no way your wife. The place got cameras. You could see everything coming. And he's been paranoid, looking at the cameras, watching for his wife. Sure enough, Sunday morning, she shows up. I don't know how. And she's like banging on the door. We got these girls. We've been partying all weekend. And then next thing you know, she caused the commotion. Cops show up, and I'm going to jail. It was like a great weekend, but I knew it was just too smooth. It was one of those weekends where I didn't get caught up in nothing. I had a really good time. They come bum rushing the place. They say some other person's name, my buddy. I said, look, I'm not him. And they're like, yeah, that's not him. We know who that is. And they said, hold on, we're just going to run your name and then you can go. They ran my name. The warrant came back. I was like, man. And I got no bond because I skipped, and so yeah, anyway, it was a great weekend, great time. It was the last Freaknik. They never did Freaknik again, where all the colleges come to Atlanta.
So that's why I don't know.
Closed down, yeah. That was 97. Yeah, you can look them up. Some of the, all the artists used to go there and all the rappers or whatever at the time. And it was a good time. But, so I'm going, I went to jail for dealing in a school zone.
Did you? I'm forgetting. Did you end up in rehab too?
Yeah. So right after this is when I end up. Something happened to the CI, the confidential informant, where the case didn't work out. He said one story. The cop said that I was the principal, and they brought this other kid who wasn't the guy I brought. They brought him in, and he ended up calling me because he ended up getting a hold of me through the other blocks. I was like, dude, I don't know why you're involved in this. I said, just keep your mouth shut. You're fine. You weren't there. And so they tried to charge me as the principal, and then they tried to charge him as the principal. And the judge is like, you just told me that this guy handed you the stuff, and you handed him the money. And then you said me at a different time. And it was the same judge. And he's like, what do you think? I'm stupid? And for the first time, the judge kind of took my side. He threw the whole case out. So I get out and I'm like, I want to do good, and I started dabbling a little, and I was like, I'm going into a program. I think I need help. Oh, while I was in that county jail that time, there was this little short lady. She's a drug counselor, and we got a really tight relationship after that. But she comes into the block, and I'm in a block with some of the most, the ones facing a lot of time. You know what I mean? They never let me go in the blocks that were nicer. They always put me in the block with guys that were serious or coming back from prison. And so I'm in this block, and this little lady comes up to me. She goes, you got a drug problem? I said, nah, I got a cop problem. She goes, you're coming to my drug block. And I was like, whatever. I was like, you bring me in there if you want to. We'll see what happens. But I liked the lady. She was feisty and short, you know what I mean? And
took an interest in you,
yeah, too. Yeah, and she spotted something. And there was a chaplain there too. He used to call me in to bring me, we drink coffee. He always wanted to talk to me. And I was like, that's weird, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, but I like getting out of my block. I like drinking the coffee. So we would sit and talk, and then going to this counselor lady, she started saying things to me that later on made sense, And
like what kinds of things?
Like she would say, the clogging of my brain, the drugs I would put in there would clog me from who I really was. And every time you do it, the allergic reaction is not the crazy things you do. It's that you make these decisions disconnected from yourself. So then you get results, and they're not your results. So you're not happy with them, and then you go crazy. So it made sense to me later. Right then, I was just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Give me my coffee.
I was like, she was fun to watch and whatever. So in the block, I lasted about 2 weeks, and I smashed somebody's face into something or whatever. I forget what it was. Oh, I broke a chair. They had these chairs, and the chair shattered. piece went up, and I told him, I said, let me sit on the stairs. These chairs are not going to hold me.
Oh, you broke it. You were sitting on it.
Yeah, there was these plastic chairs, and the guy laughed, so I beat him. And later on, as soon as the class was over, I want to do it in front of the lady. I start beating him, and I was like,
You ain't gonna laugh again.
yeah, you ain't gonna laugh again. And they kicked me out of the block. Some other kid snitched on me, but I went back to the. But she planted a little bit of a seed, because when I got out, I dabbled and I didn't like where it was going, and I kept thinking, allergic reaction, I don't want that.
Did you get serious withdrawals when you first went in there?
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say, because you were doing.
Yeah, the county's kind of the best place for me. Like I choked a nurse one time and took his Vicodin because I knew the guy from the streets. Like Collier County was, I knew people, so
you knew the nurse from the streets.
Yeah, he was a dude who ate Vicodin, and so I choked him one time and got some.
He was a nurse and he was abusing Vicodin.
Yeah, he had a prescription. Well, he had a prescription, but yeah, he always had a bottle of them. And
reassuring.
Yeah. So I knew that, and
prison nurse too.
Yeah, prison, jail. Yeah. So I figured out little ways to get things, but the habits I had grew. I was like, I can't sustain this. I just gotta, I would lay down and get sick. But it goes quick when you convince your mind that you're not doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. After that point, it's just physical, and I did that so many times that I learned to just, override that. The worst was coming off methadone. I was like 60 days of vomiting. I went to the hospital 3 times with seizures from the Xanax, and from the county to the hospital back on Christmas and Christmas Eve, and on New Year's and New Year's Eve. I was in the hospital or in the ambulance on the way to the hospital from the jail, and I'm hearing all the radios, Happy New Year, and I'm thinking, man, I'm so lifeless. I don't even care about.
Oh, so they were taking you back and forth while you were in there.
Yeah,
so it was that bad.
That was the last bid. Yeah, then when they sent me to death row,
right.
I was kicking all the way up.
We're gonna get there.
Yeah,
let's stay on track with this.
So we get to this rehab.
Yeah, you come out, you go to rehab.
Right, and so it was a 1-step, 2-step, 3-step program. They were pretty much breaking you into recovery, and they sent me to this fellowship that said, if pretty much if I don't drink, I'll be fine. And drinking was never my problem, nor was the drugs. It was the obsession that I couldn't get out of, the fixed thoughts, the endless loops in my head of I got to get this done, and I don't care what happens. The drugs and alcohol,
What done?
Whatever it was at the time. I got to get this amount of money. I got to fix this problem. All the people that would bring up things I don't like, I got to make sure they don't do that. There's a lot of work.
So they were. You're saying that the drugs or alcohol, whatever, it was masking the problem, and you're saying. I misunderstood you at first. I thought you were saying like, oh no, that wasn't a problem. But you're saying that was just a problem. That was a problem you created on top of the real problem.
Right. It was a solution to me at a time because it gave me instant relief from the pressure of the brain of all these things I thought I had to do. But yeah, it was definitely a big problem. It was the first thing I had to do to get to the solution was stop putting it in me. But at this rehab, I was convinced that I was cured as soon as I was physically cured. So intellectually, I read all these books. Since I was a kid, I've been reading the Bible trying to fix my family. So I knew all about principles. And I
read the Bible as a kid?
Oh, yeah. I read it like 3 times by the time, I don't know how many, about 3 to 5 times from the time I was 8 till I was about, I don't know how old. But in prison, too, I read a bunch of religions. But
really?
Yeah.
What I mean, like, it's kind of surprising to me, given like your whole life story before even going to prison and all that. Like, you always had to look out for yourself. But did you have like a relationship with like God?
No, I was trying to. But not for me. I was doing it to fix. My family would have these problems. Like even a funeral I went to when I was a kid. I remember my grandfather passed. Very close to him. Very sad. But people were like tearing themselves apart. And I was like, I must not care as much as these people. And I started misinterpreting and making valid how I felt, because I don't know if they were acting or they just ran out of their minds, but I couldn't tell. But I really felt out of place because I felt sad. I was going to miss them. But I thought it was, it was just time. You know what I mean? Like I kind of looked at it like when, like nothing was permanent. We were going to meet up again. You know, it was just his time. And I felt, you know, fine until people wouldn't come out of their rooms. People weren't eating. They were acting, you know, really strange to me. And I kind of felt like I wasn't part of the human race for a minute there. Or at that time, I didn't have that kind of introspect. But I knew I felt alien to them and the way they were. And I felt a little guilty. I was like, man, I don't feel like hurting myself. I don't think he'd want me to hurt myself. You know, and I was like trying to honor the guy, and he was a good guy. I was like really close to him. But yeah, later on I found out my mom resented him for leaving my grandmother, getting with another woman that wasn't very nice. I didn't realize that people act in accordance to their guilt and shame. And at that time I had nothing but good connections with the guy. So when he left, there was just sadness. There wasn't no, oh, I should have called him more, or not, because I wanted to spend every moment with him.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you turned to meaning like in the Bible because you saw these other people and how they were acting, and you wanted to be able to act like that, but you couldn't. And so you're like, well, I must be able to get answers in this thing.
Well, I wanted them to not feel so destructive to themselves over things. So I thought this God thing was a good idea. But my mom and my two sisters were Jehovah's Witnesses at the time. They were a little over the top. And, well,
Were they doing the whole knocking on the door
Nah,
thing?
they weren't doing that.
All
But
right, good.
yeah, they would just tell you how wrong you are and how they're right.
I got you.
Yeah, so, and they wouldn't let me have any play guns, you know, so I got a real obsession with guns. I liked guns because they would always take my toy guns, you know what I mean? So when
You were trying to buy real ones.
I get real
off them.
ones, yeah. And that way I'll cap them if they try to take them. No, I'm just kidding. But, so yeah, so we get, I had those little events where I just started, you know, alienating myself. And then at the same time, I'm reading these books to try to give them, like, make some sense of what, you know, you're doing this. It doesn't make any sense. You're suffering from it. Stop it. You know what I mean? And they couldn't do that. And I was very willful and prideful when I was a little kid. If I didn't want to do something, like I didn't smoke cigarettes, I thought people that did drugs were scumbags.
Weak.
Yeah, weak. Yeah, and it wasn't until I got to Naples, Florida, where everybody's all glamorous, nobody's losing teeth or sleeping in a bush, that I said, drugs might not be that bad. You know? yeah, these people own houses, they're doing good. But where I was from, they come crawling out of the bush.
Yeah.
I had a box cutter put to my throat when I was little, you know, taking my bike, you know, stuff like that. My dad would go get it back, but you know, somebody puts a blade to your throat, you're just like, all right, take it, you know.
You get used to this kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's what I connected to drugs and drug users and all that. And later on, when I started robbing drug dealers, I didn't have any mercy, you know.
Yeah, now that's an interesting, let's jump to that for a second.
Sure.
Because, you know, one of the reasons we mentioned, like Omar Little earlier, one of the reasons people loved that character, not just because he was like this complex guy and had just a really, really interesting character play, one of the best ever in TV, but he was a Robin Hood. You know, he's like, I robs drug dealers. He'd run around and he'd take money from drug dealers, and he would always have enough to be able to spend for his own life, but he lived in the hood too.
Right.
And he looked at it like he was also doing a public service because these people are just giving everyone their fix.
Right.
And so you came at it from the end of like, you were a drug user too.
Right.
So you also knew, at least probably by that point, the downsides of what this can do to people.
Yeah.
And so there's a part of you that obviously has like a care in that. Like, okay, I'm going to fund myself here. And some of my habit, which, you know, negative in that respect because that's robbing and all that. But B, maybe there will be people who won't end up like me because they can't get it. There isn't a guy right here.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of I scared people into recovery. Yeah, a lot of times that happened too, and I was like, I'm just sending people back into recovery. You know, drugs take you out, I send you right back. You know, because I'm doing all the drugs. But so it was a persona, I guess, that I took on that was it gave me some sense of purpose. You know, and I really remember saying one time, I don't know if I can get in trouble for this, but. Whatever. I was on. This house was being watched by a certain drug cops. drug cops.
DEA.
Yeah. So anyway, I go in on New Year's Eve, and I knew there was a bunch of stuff there, and a friend of mine told me all the logistics. So I go in there and I just pick a guy up, throw him through a table, rob everything there, and I get caught on camera. And this kid tries to snitch on me, and he tells my friend, the buddy that was on Escape from Norway, well, we've been running together for a long time. He didn't do robberies because he had a bad memory, and he wanted somebody coming up, and I had a really good memory at the time. And I said, yeah, I don't care if they remember or not. You know what I mean? But he didn't want to get stole. You know what I mean?
He didn't want to get what?
Like stole on, like caught unaware by somebody he forgot he robbed.
Oh,
they come up to him and start stabbing him.
I understand now.
Yeah,
Okay.
He wasn't afraid of it. He just didn't like that somebody being out there.
You just didn't give a shit.
I didn't give a shit. Yeah. There was a guy, I forgot the story I told him, and he was in front of my boy's house. And he starts saying, and his girlfriend's, boosting him up. He's like, you did this, you did that. I said, man, I can't remember the story. So I whack him in the ear. And I said, shut up and leave. And my boy goes, what was that for? I said, I couldn't remember the lie I told him. He's like, yeah. And so his girl, and I was like, shut her up too. And I remember like ringing his ear. I didn't want to hit him because I didn't feel right. I already robbed him apparently. But I couldn't remember. I was, everybody was a mark or the next thing, So I said, yeah, I probably did it, but whatever, and so
rehab didn't work. You were back out and you were robbing people because your daughter was born, and you're like, well, I'm still on drugs, but at least I'll rob drug dealers.
Right. Well, the short time I left rehab, they graduated me early and said they couldn't teach me anything. Again, right over my head. I was like, oh, I knew this stuff.
Well, I'm good at this.
Yeah, I'm good at this. I could teach this stuff. They're like, yeah, you can teach it, but you can't live it. They didn't tell me that part. They were nice about it. They graduated me early. The girl who I was messing with in the program, she left right after that and came with me. And I told her, I said, look, the nicest I ever been has been in that little 20 days I was there, or 15 days.
That's not a long time.
No, but I was like really buying into it. The first week I was there was a little rough because they were doing this circle thing where people share their deepest stuff. I was like, that's insane.
Fuck that
shit. So this one dude who confessed to, blowing a guy for crack, I was like, damn, this same guy said he messed with my boy's brother, the thoroughbred from Jersey. He said he punked him. And so I didn't know about anonymity or keeping people's. I called him on the phone. I said, hey, there's a guy in this program that just almost too close said he sucked dick for crack, and then he said he punked you. So the guy comes to, I said, we're going to this meeting tonight. So we go to this meeting, and he just starts beating him in the meeting. He shows up there. He's like, oh, you punked me, huh? And it was
no.
Later on, like years later, I was like, oh, that was a bad thing to do. But at the time, I was
didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't know. He was talking, I was like, he ain't here. Why are you talking about him? You know what I mean? And I know this guy. He's not he's not a big guy, but he don't back down from nothing. And he tried to hit me with a bat one time. I had to snatch it out of him. Yeah, I put him under my
guy.
Yeah, I put him under my tire. No, he was a nice guy.
You put him under your tire.
Yeah, I was like, stay there while I run this car, and he wouldn't stay there. But he was annoying, but he was so funny. He used to bite my arm all the time.
Even after the whole tire incident?
Yeah,
he was still cool.
Oh yeah.
It's all in love and war.
You gotta love him. He was just, he'd be in the middle of the hood telling racist jokes and having people laugh at their own. Yeah,
people like
it's just hilarious. Yeah.
There's some things that like you'd hear someone say if you've ever been around someone like that, and you're like, how are you not getting shot for that?
Yeah,
but then everyone's like, oh, this guy, we love him. I'm like, what?
Nobody takes him that seriously.
Do you hear what he just said to you?
Yeah. And he's doing it all for the next thing. He brought me a fat gold chain for like a rock. He's like, all I want is a rock, a needle, and a bag, and I'm straight. And I was like, you sure?
That's so
I gave
sad.
him, but I gave him a lot more. No, but that's what he loved. He
Yeah.
died doing that. He had leukemia. He was in the hospital, mainlining it through his
Jesus
pick.
Christ.
Yeah, I beat a guy up for that too in the hospital. Yeah, I was like, why are you bringing him? I'm bringing the guy soup. I'm clean at the time, and I'm bringing him soup and trying to look out for him. And this guy's bringing him cocaine in the middle of the hospital. I'm like, I had a weird moral system in my head, I guess.
You did. You had a very warped all over the place system. Like
Yeah.
there are things that were so obvious that you thought, oh, nothing. And everyone else would be like, why the fuck are you doing that?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things where it's like, oh wow, he took a stand on that. You know what I mean? Like
out of nowhere too.
It's bizarre.
I would find things that were just I couldn't live with it.
But you were coasting this whole time. You never really. I mean, that's what you've been talking about the whole time. You were never. You never thought about this.
Yeah, never
and it sounds
experiencing.
Like, it sounds like you never thought about it, even when you were like reading the Bible and stuff. It was just kind of like you were reading it.
No, I was finding the answers for other people. Yeah, I didn't realize at the time. If I'd have looked at that stuff as this is to keep you at peace, like myself, it would have worked. But because I never integrated it, I just intellectually understood it. Told people if you do this, apparently this will happen. And you know, it seemed sound in theory that if you're forgiving, you don't run around with this resentment, you don't feel so bad. And I would try to explain this stuff, and I would get discounted, you know, and because I didn't have any experience with it. One, I was young, and but these ideas made sense to me. That what does that do? Replaying something in your head that makes you miserable over and over again. Why? If you got a choice of 1 billion thoughts, why are you holding on to this? You know what I mean? And you try to say that, and you look like a little punk to people that have been alive for, you know, years and years, and they got stuff or whatever. So I was frustrated. I was like, this don't work. God doesn't work. You know what I mean? And I, you know, get foxhole prayers sometimes, but no real connection to that for years. And the life I ran seemed to go uncontrollably. It just got worse and worse. Like I would keep reacting. I had no time to process. Right. I would just react. And, you know, I get stopped periodically. Like prison was breaks for me after that. I would get small bids, work them down, go take a break for a couple of years. People don't, they're not so frustrated with you. You're not so frustrated.
Controlled environment. Can't go certain places.
Yeah, it kept me out of trouble. And I liked, I had a bigger obsession of not going to sleep at night with a feeling of being chumped. So I stayed spiritually fit, not spiritually fit, physically fit, mentally strong, you know what I mean? And always ready to wreck something. And that was a bigger obsession than using. So I wouldn't use for years at a time.
Really? So you could just kind of...
Yeah, it was, well, like I said earlier, I wasn't a drug addict. I was addicted to altered realities. I was addicted to living in my head, perceiving things the way I want to, not feeling things I don't want to.
Now, when you were doing the hardest stuff, though, obviously you still had scientific withdrawals.
Physical withdrawals, yeah. But those, you know, like I said, the worst one was the methadone, and that lasted 60 days.
And a lot of that was caused by like a bid in jail or something like that. So it might be involuntary to get off it, but then you'd just be off it.
Yeah, once I'm off of it, I had bigger fish to fry.
That's interesting. So the thought, you don't have a lot of people have a very natural, like, addictive gene in anything. Yeah. Right? Just, you know, I decide that I like Pepsi. Oh, fuck it. I'm going to have more Pepsi
Drink
tomorrow.
Gallons of it.
Yeah, it seems like you were more, and you keep on talking about it, but you were more on the psychological side. Like, you were addicted to feeling a certain way about the world. And if you couldn't feel that way, if you couldn't, like, coast through, then you wanted to do drugs. Yeah. But this way, when you weren't so focused on, I'm trying to make sense here, but when you weren't so focused on that end of it, you could kind of just cut the drugs, at least for a time being, because it was like that wasn't, it was never there for the, oh, I feel this way on heroin. Oh, I feel that way on coke. It was more so like, oh, I get rid of this other thing on that. And if you didn't feel like you had to get rid of it, okay.
Yeah. Well, what I discovered later on was when I was in the thick of trafficking or doing stuff, I stumbled upon living principles. Like I was living safety. I was living security. I was like if I had a bunch of ammo, you know what I mean? I felt safe. I had a purpose. I was bringing a purpose. There was all these little things that I thought these things I thought up were the things making me feel this way. But it was actually these fundamental things that I didn't have growing up, the safety, security, significance. And I found that these things that I stumbled upon were the real thing I was trying to get through my own means. Like I had no way to do it. and I wouldn't let nobody help me because I didn't know how to let people in. But I'm gonna get it.
You just hit something really big right
Yeah.
there. And this is I don't know the name for it, but we could probably look it up. It's some sort of psychological principle. But when you look at people's lives, for better or worse, whatever, the actions that they take as an adult are to fill some sort of priority that they wanted to have as a kid. And it can be good, it can be bad, it can be, but I think usually it's probably some form of both.
Right.
But like you just said, you wanted safety, security, and what was the other thing?
Significance.
Significance. Okay.
Yeah.
And these are things you didn't have as a kid because, you know, we already went through your childhood and like some of the things there, moving around, your parents divorcing, your dad went through all that stuff, almost died, you know, and then you were around people who I would characterize as on the more of the dangerous type of side of society. So you didn't know peace.
Right.
You didn't know like, oh, regular middle class living. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you wanted it. And so all the things you did wrong, even older, was in a weird way trying to get that.
Yes, exactly. And when it seemed like I was getting it, like times I had my kid, was working, was valid at work.
Where were you working?
I was working for a concrete company called Baker Concrete in Miami. We poured all the concrete for Dolphin Mall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was on a prison work release crew. I kept the job when I got out. I got my daughter back. I got her mother, who, you know, wanted to party sometimes. I couldn't do it. I said, you know, go do what you got to do. I can't do that. I just want to be a dad and work. One day I come home, they had dipped. She had enough, or I wouldn't go out and drink with her or nothing, and I just knew I couldn't. After I held her, I knew I couldn't drink or do anything and and change the way I needed to change.
But at some point you did go back to drugs because
Right after they left.
Right after they
now
left.
it
Makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't care about the job no more. I went right into Wynwood, which is yeah. So
that makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
Okay.
and that happened a few times. I built my life back up to the point where I was ready to be the dad or ready to be, you know, upstanding member of society. And then my reason for doing it was this or that. It wasn't just for the sake of doing right. You know, and it never lasted. As soon as the picture fell apart, I fell apart. Yeah, because I was like, man, this is just hopeless. You know, I just keep building up, but I didn't have any meaning beyond another person I cared about. I couldn't, my worth was so low. I didn't see the point in doing anything if I didn't have a goal I was working towards.
Well, when you were 8 years old looking to buy a gun, you were doing it because you needed to be the man of the house in your mind.
Yeah.
So you didn't have protection, but you wanted to give protection.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when you're older, even down to like drug dealers who are working for you, like a negative environment, that kind of thing.
Right.
Well, I need to protect them a little bit.
Yeah,
You know,
look
don't
out
go
for
this
'em.
don't go this drop because I think it's a setup.
Right.
Okay, you still want to go? I'll go with you just to watch you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and then you get the ultimate one. You have a kid.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, my life just changed.
Yeah.
We're going to cut all this other shit. Like, I'm going to protect her.
Right.
And then she's not there.
Right.
And now it's like,
just falls
fuck it.
apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because somehow I always thought I'll be all right. I can do whatever. But every once in a while, I would stumble upon somebody I cared about, and they can't do whatever. You know what I mean? And some reason I thought they were different in that sense. Like I can handle all kinds of, you know, pain, but you can't. And that was a weird, non-existent virtue I plucked out of somewhere. And because I had been
just a little closer.
Oh yeah, I had been there to the point where I was in a box for 13 months in isolation. There was nothing you could do to me. In fact, leaving me alone for 13 months is fine. It's when I'm, having to deal with different people's, disappointment in me or anything like that. Yeah. Those are the things that hurt. So I'm in prison. I don't care what, I had no, your opinion doesn't matter.
So your daughter left though. And then you didn't have her, and so now you turn back to drugs.
Yep.
Now you're robbing drug dealers and stuff. What else went on?
Well, a weird thing happened. I went on another running thing, and it was getting worse. It was getting worse to the point where the drugs weren't getting me no relief. I didn't know what I was working towards, and I'm going 100 miles an hour, not really, going anywhere. So I kept getting stuck stopped. I kept getting, knocked off and going back and forth and trying again and trying again. It wasn't until this buddy of mine came down to get me, and I was actually looking for more bullets. That was the thing I wanted him to grab and bring down for me. And he brought me down and tricked me into going in this detox in Fort Myers. And that's where I met that one guy that started making sense of some stuff.
Oh, we were talking about way at the beginning, I think, right?
Yeah. We talked about it a little bit. That guy learned he knew how to separate what I did from who I am. Yeah, even when I would write stuff down, it was all true and it all happened, but he said, I don't see that in you, And I did a lot of stupid things when I was with him. Like one time his wife kept bothering me about, she wasn't bothering me. She was nagging him about the food bill.
Oh, because you lived
I got
with
my
them
appetite back.
You lived with them after the detox for 6 months, right?
Yeah, this guy's taking me to 5 meetings a day.
Yeah.
I'm sleeping on this futon, which is like 5 feet long. I'd wake up with like lines going through my leg, my circulation cut off. I had a line right here.
I can't see you sleeping
6
on like
months
a queen
I
bed.
stayed on that thing. That's how interesting this guy was. 6 months I stayed on that thing. And
after
I had
the detox.
Yeah, I had a king bed that I could have went back to in Naples. It was a house that I kind of took over and made the guy move out. But
What do you mean you took over and made the guy move out?
yeah, it was this nice neighborhood. I used to, and then one day he just annoyed me, and it was his house. But I was like, dude, you got to go. Yeah, I was like, you got to go, man. I can't. He's like, this is I said, just don't argue with me. Just leave. And he left, and I even said to him, I was like, yeah, your girl can stay, but you got to go. That was one of the most dickish moves. He was a nice kid, too.
He just left.
Yeah, he just left.
Never came back.
Yeah, well, he complained about it to a few people, and I was like,
It's a house.
Yeah, and I called him. I said, dude, you complaining about this? No, I didn't say nothing. I was like, you're doing me because I used to have this weird thing where I had to make the person I was offending okay with it. Like if you were going to be around and I was going to see you, I don't want my conscience feeling all bad. So get happy about the way I'm taking advantage.
Means I care about you.
Yeah, not really. I just cared about my conscience driving me crazy. Yeah, later on I felt like such a jerk. I did that so many times where I was like, you're not really mad, right? And I would say it over and over again. If I liked the person, if I didn't, it was easy. But if I liked the person and I knew I was being a dick, I had to get them okay with it.
I had to get them okay with it.
Yeah, it was a weird thing. I couldn't go to sleep. My conscience would bother me, And it's such a, even if I got him to say it, that was good enough for me. But that didn't change nothing.
It's a participation trophy.
Yeah.
You needed to feel like you had something to point to. Well, there's the evidence. They're cool.
Right
They're cool
there.
with it.
Yeah,
All
they
right,
said it. Why would you say it if you're not cool with it?
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah, there was weird things going on. I truly believe we got this big power inside of us, and it can go either way. But the right way to do it is, lovingly and respectfully. And I, abused that for a while,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you got out of this whole thing and you were living with that couple for 6 months,
right?
What you left?
So one night I got tired of hearing her, nag about it. It was about
food.
3 months. Yeah. Well, it took about 2 months for me to start eating. Once I started eating, people realized I'd rather, clothe you than feed you. But, so I go into this hood in Fort Myers, knock this guy out. I leave the drugs because I'm trying to do right. And I take the money and I bring it back and I give it to her.
Don't worry about where it came from.
Well, she didn't care. She just wanted the money. She was a funny lady and a sweetheart of a lady. But her husband finds out about it and he starts yelling at me. He's like, "Where's your worth?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "You're not going to tell me?" I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." You know what I mean? I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Did you do the, he didn't really know what I did. He goes, "Where did you get a bag of money?" And
I found it.
Yeah. And that's what I started out with. And I was like, nah, I like this guy, I said, I went, this guy was, not doing the right thing. I'm like a little kid. I feel like he's hating me right now. Because that was another thing. I interpreted discipline as you hate me. Anytime somebody tried to discipline me, I thought they hated me. And I don't know where I got that from, but it was just avoid that person. Don't go around them or get rid of them, whatever. And so he started doing this thing where he was he was like, does it make any sense that you can't hear any nagging, but you'll face so many years in prison if a cop seen you, knocking this guy out and taking his money? And I was like, yeah, he's a bad guy. You know what I mean? And I would just brush it off. And another time, this guy was giving me like pizza all the time. So I like, that's pretty nice. I was walking around talking to people. I was starting to be nice. And so the guy was just being nice, giving me pizza. I started like showing up with friends. Give me 3 pizzas. and then one day he refused me. And I was like, oh, no problem. And I walked out and I thought I was being, recovery like. I thought I was doing the right thing. I walk out to get in the car with this sponsor at the time. He was my sponsor. And he goes, where's your worth? I was like, yeah, you're right. And I go back in and I'm punching the guy now.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I got pit. And he comes in, get out here, dickhead. And he calls me dickhead. And I was
That's
like,
not what I meant.
yeah. I was like, what do you mean I'm getting my worth? He's like, I was so confused what he was giving me and trying to explain things to me. One time this guy was yelling at him, and I heard it. And I'm on Fort Myers Beach. And he's like really in his face. And I like this guy. So like, I'm going to hurt this other dude. So I come running back because he was parking the car and the guy was yelling at him for something stupid. So I come running around the car and he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I was like, no, whoa, whoa. And I go to beating him and he yanks me by my hoodie, pulls me back. I was like, what are you doing? Let me go. And the guy's like, he goes, you did what you were supposed to do. You know what I mean? You stunned him from being, a dick to him,
Right.
He was going overboard. And
Job
you
was
don't yell
done.
at, yeah.
Job was done.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. Because he took me in a few places to get people out of dope holes, girls that couldn't get out, or they would call him. And I would go, help him with these things. And he would never let me get too violent. You know what I mean? I was like, dude, this is something I can do.
And you don't think that's the thing. You're not thinking of it like that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it like I'm playing my
I gotta take care of this.
I gotta look out for him.
It's not like I'm going to go beat the shit out of this guy. You're going to watch his nose bleed and everything, and his face is going to be... It wasn't like that. It was more like, wait, that guy's yelling at that guy. That guy's a good guy he's yelling at. So let's just... Yeah, he's not going to do that again.
No, and I'm not going to let him do that. Yeah. And that was a big thing he taught me was everybody has the same worth. Everybody. Even that guy that's yelling, he has the same worth. And even though his actions are calling for... a bad time for him, he still has the same worth as any other human being. And that was a weird concept to me. I was like, well, not everybody has the same worth. That's like, what about this person, that? And I had an argument about all of it. But later on, I realized he was 100% correct. You know what I mean? That people's statuses go up and down, money goes up and down, but your worth as a human being and your welfare. There was a guy a long time ago that, famous guy, I can't remember, but he said you could judge a country or a place by how it treats its prisoners. Because I thought about that for a minute. I was like, prison's kind of weird.
We're not doing too well here. Then.
Yeah. Well, they're doing a lot better in some countries. You know what I mean?
No, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
But you're right, though. But they lock it, like Florida, they got like 45, privately owned prisons. People making money off prisons.
That's a whole nother thing.
But how they treat them, though, I used to think, like when somebody's cutting themselves or throwing, feces at the cop or something, they deserve to, at the one time I was like, it's kind of disgusting, Like I used to think some people deserve death just because they were out of their mind or whatever. I'm like, who's going to put up with that? Like nobody puts up with that when I act like that. And I would get this. But after that guy, I started realizing that their worth is the same. Their worth and their welfare is the same. And I get the idea where people start, trying to make it a perfect world, which is impossible, to make everything, if everybody would just act this way. Well, no, embracing all the diversity is the first part of that. Then learning how to be at peace during anything. That's what this guy taught me. And it took years and years before it started making sense to me.
There's kind of a difference though, right? In certain things. Like, not to say that the concept's not right, I'm just trying to understand. Right. Sure. Like, if you were to see, this was definitely something I'm sure that would have pissed you off based on your actions, like with principles. But if you were to see someone, let's say, robbing a little old lady and beating the shit out of her,
Right.
you're gonna go hurt that dude, and you should in that case, get him off or that whole thing. But like in
100%.
your mind, you're not thinking like their worth right there is not the same.
Their worth is the same. Their actions are calling for a world like where that's what happens to them. Like that's the thing. Yeah, you're creating your world all day long with your decisions. And so if you're a guy that goes around and beats up old people or any of that, you're gonna be an old person that gets beat up. You kind of create a world like that where everybody's so cold and everything. You're already in your own personal hell. Now, definitely somebody would definitely deal with that, and I don't think they'd be wrong if it wasn't premeditated. Like if it was happening around me, I would beat that guy.
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and then
you'd be right to do that.
Yeah, and I would get him in a mental institution now, whereas before I might try to, never let this guy do this again.
Now, okay, now it makes you're looking at people as everyone. Like, let's look at it from the negative end, like bad people. They're doing it out of some sort of injury. They're fucked up, and we can treat them as fucked up, but wherever we got to take them, and that may obviously for things include prison and stuff like that, where it's supposed to be like correcting people. I'm not so sure about that, but like we got to get them there rather than just say off with his head right now.
Right.
There's at least some form of empathy for everyone.
Because you create a world of murderers when you murder that guy. Yeah, that's the world you're creating now. It might take a while, but it's like, okay, well, he did jaywalk, let's murder him,
and that's interesting.
Yeah.
You ever see, and I don't know this topic nearly well enough to speak on it as like a historian, but you ever look at like the French Revolution at all?
Guillotine.
Right?
Yeah.
So those people who started that, the revolution was based in like class warfare. They wanted to upend the monarchistic whatever system because all the people were being treated badly and left to be poor and all that.
Right.
And so then they take power, and when they do, they got to kill the people who caused everything because they got to be out of the way. And then what do they start doing? They start turning it on themselves and on all the people they purported to help.
Yeah, it becomes their nature. They overcorrected, and now they're a victim of the same thing they were a victim of.
Fuck, yeah.
Yeah, so that's where it's tricky, though, because this guy beats this woman on emotion. You know what I mean? I would hurt that guy beyond, anything. And but logically, if I did that, I would carry that. This is where I seen it happen. I was on death row at the time. I was a medical orderly. There was a guy dead on the ground. He had been dead for about 30, 40 hours. And the EMT has to come in and declare him dead. Then I get to take him down and bring him and wait for the coroner. I was standing here. These guys, these cops knew the guard, the corrections officers. They knew he was dead. The EMTs come in. They start putting stickers on him, trying to act like they're trying to revive him. They had been making jokes before that. I had empathy for the first time in my life. Usually I'd be like, shit eater, and I would go at them too. The inmates were all screaming stuff, throwing stuff. It was a very volatile thing, like a panoramic view of just how like sick this place is. And so I see these EMTs come in to declare him dead, and they're terrified because they think these all hardened criminals. But I could feel their fear, and I could feel their fear. And it was,
both of them.
All of them. Even the guards, they go home to their families, and they just treated a human life. Now, I don't know that guy's background, but he was the same age at me at the time. I was 33. And I'm looking, and he's dead, and he looks horrible, and there's nobody there, and his nose is smashed over here. And it's just decrepit picture of a really white, pasty dude who got beat to death in his cell and left, and pretty heartless. And then they're acting like they're resuscitating him. And normally I would get really violent towards the guards there, about right there. I'd be like, you piece of shit.
They were joking around.
Joking around with somebody, and I don't know the guy's background. Maybe they thought. But I had empathy this time. I started, it was like I recognized their fear of not wanting to look soft, getting vindicated. Oh, we're doing a job here, guys. This guy's dead. He deserves it. They got like camaraderie. But these are people that are going to go home to like families and expose that to them. And they're going to create a world where it becomes like that, real sick and cold. And countless things like this. But I had this panoramic, empathetic view of everybody involved, and I could sense all their fears. And I was like, these poor people don't even, they just signed up for an EMT job. They're coming in getting exposed to this. They're getting conditioned to be okay with mangled human people and stuff. So I'm sitting with the corpse later that night. Now, I don't talk to nobody about what I really feel on the inside at this point. I'm just now getting close to this guy. He kind of broke through all that. He could see through it, and he tricked me into doing different things all the time.
This is the guy I'm trying to make
that
sure
sponsor.
I follow.
Yeah,
right.
that guy that my boy introduced me to.
Because now he's writing you in prison.
Yeah, he's writing me his long letters, telling me what to read and look into, and I'm having this weird experience, like actually kind of like one of the better experiences of my life.
just making sure I gotta remember. Is this the same guy who you were on his futon?
Yeah.
Okay,
that guy.
so same dude.
Yeah,
Okay.
I went back out. I got my daughter back. Same thing happened again, and she took off with the mom took off with her.
You left the house though. You left the place.
Oh
you
yeah,
were
I got my own
detoxing.
apartment. Yeah. From there, I did pretty good for a little while. That was something that I felt like I was cured again. Like I was cured of this obsession thing. I had a way to deal with it without using drugs. What I didn't know is I had a fixed idea that was more important than the drugs. So I didn't use the drugs. My idea was be a father, work hard, all this stuff that came with being a good father. So when you have an idea bigger than your circumstances, you could live above them. You can get power that you didn't have before. It's like a motivation or a drive. Now I didn't know that that's what I was doing at the time, but I documented a lot of stuff with my history because I was wondering, like, how do I do so good and I go down so bad? And it was over this coming up with a fixed idea that was not going to be anything I thought, and having expectations of what it was before I got there.
All right, so this is clearly a major watershed moment for you, but I want to go back because this was during your last bid then in prison.
Correct.
This is years ago now.
Yep.
But I want to go back to right before that because we had kind of skipped in the middle just of like your story timeline.
Right.
You had been on that guy's futon. You ended up leaving after the whole money thing with the food and all that.
Right.
You said you got your daughter back.
Correct.
Right? So she was in your life. And how old was she at the time?
At that time, she was about what was that, 2005? 2005, 2006. So she was about 7, 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had her back, and then she was taken from you.
Yep.
And how much longer later was that when she was taken? Like, how long was she in your life?
I had her for a few months, and then, one day I came home from work. I used to take her to the Gulf and throw her around in the Gulf, and I was working all the time. I had 2 apartments, one for her mother and one for myself, because her mother still was, doing stuff at the time. And I couldn't afford that, and plus I wanted to be a father. So I was just doing everything I could. I thought I was doing everything right, but one day I came home and they were gone. So I just, my friend who brought me into doing good decided to go and start trafficking again. He thought he can do it because he was so clean and everything else. It didn't make any sense to me at the time, and I didn't know what to tell him. I just said, I don't think that's a good idea. But then when my daughter left, I went right back to hanging with him, and we went on another, maybe a couple years before, maybe a year or two. Yeah, not even. Maybe about, let me see what year that was. Not too long did I go off the deep end, and then it was all a blur. I remember trying to detox him again. He couldn't get clean again. I couldn't get clean again.
And you were selling.
And I was, well, at that time I didn't like drug dealers, and I thought, I'm not selling drugs, because I knew what it was doing to people from being in recovery. So I went to robbing, just robbing drug dealers
Just
and doing all
around.
the drugs. Yeah. And then my father at the time told me, he's like, hey, if you want to get off that, heroin, I know people from back when he was in the service. He said they do this methadone, and we'll go to the doctor and get you the methadone. You'll be fine.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
So that's how that happened.
Yeah. So me and him were, going to these doctors, and the doctors were just handing out. At that time, there was the big, whatever. And I had enough messed up with me, and he had enough messed up with him where we were each getting bottles of 300, 40 milligram methadone wafers a month. And I'm eating all of them. Like I'm eating like 20 a day to start out, and then I'm doing, Coke and Xanax. I'm just trying to kill this hurt inside of me. I didn't know it at the time, but there wasn't enough. And I'm doing, crazier than I ever been. And so I end up getting caught. Just a simple possession. I was getting pulled over. I threw a couple guns out the window. Luckily they didn't see it. And then by the time they caught me, there was something in the back. I didn't. It was like one pill in my sock, and the judge was trying to give me like life in prison as a career criminal
For just possession?
Yeah, for simple possession. And I told the judge I was, I stayed out on bond for a while. And right before I turned myself in to go to that court date, I knew I was going to take a plea if they would give me one. So that night before, I'm watching this like Hallmark commercial of a guy and his daughter, and I'm like, I should be feeling something. I can't feel anything.
Were you still using?
Yeah. Well, I was on all that methadone. Yeah, I was using.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting high anymore, but I was using still, just physically addicted. And so the night before I turned myself in, I got this I'm like the Walking Dead. I was like, I'm going to court tomorrow. I'm eating all this methadone. Nothing's, I'm shooting coke. I'm not getting nothing. I'm not getting any feelings. So I go into court the next day, and I'm kind of defeated anyway. And I told my lawyer, I said, tell him I'll take 2 years right now if he wants to give it to me. For one pill that I had a script for, it was out of the bottle, and it was in my sock. Now, granted, I had, had a couple guns. I got away with stuff, so I was like, you know what, I'll take 2 years. And the judge is like, why am I not giving him life right now?
What is it? How was he getting to life? I don't.
Well, they got a thing down there called career criminal, and I did 3 bids, and they were just tired of me. They deemed me incorrigible, like I said.
They said that right then.
Yeah, this sentence, he was like, this guy, he's incorrigible. And the DOC too, they deemed me incorrigible. That's why they sent me to the only prison in Florida, not a correctional facility.
So for people who don't understand, incorrigible is quite literally means
beyond
not
hope.
correctable.
Yeah, not correctable. Yeah.
And so is that also like a physical stature thing? Because you're also like a huge guy, and they're like, oh, he's got an aggressive history, so he'll beat the shit out of anyone or maybe kill somebody.
Yeah, they had all that, all the ingredients of why I should never be in society. And statistically, I should have never been out more than a week, according to them. So at this point, I'm 31 felonies deep. They're pretty much done with me, and they're trying to. So I told the judge, I said, look, I'll take 2 years right now, or I said, or we can go to trial and I'll beat this, and I'll just wreak havoc. You know what I mean?
You said that.
Yeah, I said, I'm not giving you an ultimatum. I said, that's exactly what's going to happen if I don't go lay down for a while.
Because you were addicted.
Yeah, I was addicted to this methadone. He goes, so you're high right now? And I said, no, I ain't been high in a long time. I said, I'm using, but do I look high to you? And I said, I'm talking to you. I said, I'm not high. I'm just done. I want to go lay down.
What did you say?
The judge, he turned a little red. We called him Heartless Heart. But he's like, 2 years. And he yells, and he's all frustrated. Gives me 2 years. I go to jail that day, and I start kicking. And it's right around December 6th of 2006. And so I end up in the hospital. No, it was December 16th or something like that. Right before Christmas. I end up in the hospital. They took me to the hospital on Christmas Eve, was there through Christmas, and then New Year's Eve, there through New Year's.
This is what you were talking about going back and forth earlier.
Yeah, because I guess my kidneys and I was having seizures for the first time, and Xanax or some, I don't know what it was, a combination of things. But So anyway, they end up shipping me right out to prison in Miami, and then to Rayford, up in up in North Florida.
And what's the difference? You said this is the only
This is the
state
only
prison?
state prison. Yeah, this is where they send people that correction is not deemed necessary in their case. They're not going to be corrected.
And it's not. Here's what I'm confused about, though.
Right.
They don't just send. Because you went there, you had a 2-year sentence. You didn't have a life sentence or something.
I had a 2-year sentence. Well, at that time, they had allowed for workers to go there. So I had a small enough charge, but a most horrendous enough record to justify putting me there. You know what I mean?
Got it.
And they made me a medical orderly where if guys tried to kill themselves, or I would take them and go get them. I didn't mess with the people being executed. They had nothing to do with them, but
they made prisoners. Maybe I should know this, but they gave you like that kind of responsibility.
yeah, they don't want to do it. Yeah, nobody wants to pick up a body. Or I picked up a guy one time, broke his neck trying to hang himself. He started blowing up. I didn't want to deal with him. Dead bodies are fine, but when they're almost dead or looking at you like you could save them and you're wheeling them down the mile there, it's not a good look.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first thing they did was cut his throat and stick things down his throat. And I was like, man, this is above my pay grade, you know? And
Damn.
yeah, so, I've seen a lot of crazy things like that, and I was just, I was reflecting on that, while I was in there, I was kind of like still not living, but observing. You know what I mean? And then I started observing without judgment. I'm like,
And this is where that moment came in.
yeah. One of those epiphanies was that empathy.
Right.
The second thing was there was certain guys there that were waiting to be executed, knew they were going to die, and they had this peace about them that was beyond anything I'd ever seen. Yeah, it was almost like an aura. I was like, man, how are these people so peaceful? Everybody says they're scared of dying, they're not scared of dying, but I know a lot of guys that said that. And when it gets to that point, they're terrified.
Sure.
Yeah, but there's a lot of tough guys out there that act like they're not scared, and then you find out they're really terrified.
I think it's also the scheduling of it.
Yeah, like knowing the exact
weird.
date. Yeah, and some of these guys been there waiting, and they knew it was time. But the interesting thing was, because of the guy writing me the letters, I was observing. I was like, this is kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like, these guys got this peace about them. What's going on with them? And because of their predicament, they didn't really talk to guys like me that were going down, going back out in 2 years or whatever. So somehow I've always, psychopaths, have always opened up to me, I guess. So they just start, and plus I can hand stuff from cell to cell. I said, no drugs, if you need this or that, I got you, but don't put no drugs in there. And most of them respected that. And the ones that didn't, other people handled it. So I used to tell them, hey, look, I ain't got a life or death sentence. I leave here, respect what I'm doing, and I'll do the same. No shooting blood at me, they shoot blood at the guards, they cut themselves or whatever. None of that, you know what I mean? Or you won't get nothing, and I did. I went without. It was pretty cool. I got to meet some wild people.
Like who?
Well, there was people. One guy that ate his parents back in the 70s or 60s. He'd been
Ate
down.
his parents?
Yeah, he was a cannibal. He actually got released in 2012.
No way.
Yeah.
So he wasn't on death row.
He was on death row. He was sentenced to life, but he outlived their life sentence. Like, a life sentence is not always life. It's 25 years.
And they gave him parole. Yeah. He ate his parents and they gave him parole.
Yeah, I was nice to
Don't
this
say
guy.
this isn't a country of second chances.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to do too well. Like, not too long. I was a medical orderly. One time he took his dentures, pulled a chunk of calf out and ate it. His own calf. Yeah.
How long had he been in there?
He'd been in there quite a while. I don't even like talking about the guy if he's out walking around.
Oh, my God.
Almost showing up at my house with a fork and a knife.
Yeah, you're a big steak, too.
Yeah. He's looking at me like... But I actually stopped a woman from getting eaten by him or whatever he does to people because she was disrespectful to him. And I said, look, lady, I said, I know you're new here. You really shouldn't talk to people that ain't got nothing to lose like that. And she was kind of rude to him, And he had a little shank and stuff.
They didn't have the whole Hannibal Lecter thing on him like that?
No, not when he was in there getting because the way I met him and started, kind of talking to him was I ran these betadine baths, and then they bring him in all, like Silence of the Lambs up, and then they release all that so he could take these baths because his calf, You couldn't have that getting infected down there. Funny thing about death row is if you're on a waiting list for a liver or a kidney, you get first priority over everyone else. Like
Regular people.
yeah, because they're not going to kill you until you're healthy. Yeah, if you got cancer, they give you the treatment. You know, they get you nice and healthy for your execution. So,
That's one of the most fucked up things.
yeah, it goes back to that thing I told you. I think they bought into that. You could tell a society by the way it treats its prisoners. And they buy into it in some senses, but then there's always people that are doing really heinous things. So I got to know these guys, and the ones that I found that had this peace were calling their loved ones and saying, don't worry about me. Let's talk about my niece. Let's talk about this and that. And so they had got outside of themselves. They like transcended even their execution. And I thought that was interesting because the guy that was sending me these letters and having me read these books, they said that most of the problems is caused from a self-absorbed, becoming aware, you know, going back to the Bible, like who told you were naked? You know what I mean? Like it was like who told you to be aware of yourself? Well, we've taken it, our society's taken that to a whole nother level. Selfies, you know, all that. But these guys knew they had surrendered and accepted their death, and then they looked to be helpful. Now, that's something I identified with. A couple times I was facing life for different things. Some I did, some I kind of did. Some were blown up out of proportion. But,
so you were in court other times.
Oh, yeah, a lot of times, yeah.
But you always walked free.
Yeah, basically. If you just sit quietly, people pretty much, they don't really do good police work, or I'm not going to knock them, but what they do is they try to get somebody to snitch. If nobody snitches, which I never had a co-defendant, I didn't keep a co-defendant. So if you just be quiet long enough, eventually they come down, and if it's doable, fine. But they would come to me with like life plus 5. I'd be like, all right, well, I didn't kill anybody, so I'm going to go ahead and pass that one. And then I would look to.
I love the plus 5 stuff.
Yeah,
like,
plus 5.
Life in prison. Yeah. You know what? Plus 7.
Yeah, plus 7. They should have gave Lurch that Cannibal plus something because, well, again, he's out, so I don't want to talk about him. Yeah, but yeah. So anyway, going back to these people that I picked up, I detected a sense of peace that I didn't even know I was attracted to. And I didn't know that's what I was looking for from this obsession with the drugs, with, you know, getting this, getting that, acquiring money, or all these things. When I had a goal and I got to it, I was ready to blow my head off because I was like, this ain't the answer. And so I pretty much sought out everything except for what was right in front of my face to just be myself. You know, really look at things honestly, ask my close people, what do they think, to open up my mind, you know, to allowing somebody into my thought processes, why I act like this. Because I used to like it when people said I was crazy or whatever, because they left me alone. You know what I mean? I didn't have to deal with them. You know, yeah, I'm crazy. But I really thought I knew what I was doing. But in the meantime, I was practicing so many insane things that went against my grain that I suffered from derangement. I upset the working order of my mind. And now I am, you know, kind of insane because I don't even know when I'm doing something. I kind of know, right. But it's like, yeah, that's not important. What's important here is that we don't deal with that, you know? And so just a totally compounded ignorance, I heard one guy call it one time. I didn't know what I didn't know. I lost touch with all reality. Were
you living... Because you said like you were at that state prison and you were an orderly on death row. You weren't living on death row though.
Yeah, I lived. Well, no, not on death row with the inmates. There was 3 prisons. There was New River East, there was Union, and there was Rayford. I was in Rayford. They committed people to death here, and then in Union they did the same. But there was fences separating us. It's like a triangle.
Got it.
Yeah, I took a friend of mine to see the place one time, and it's a very gloomy place.
It's a nice resort attraction over there, Mark.
Yeah, so
Mark doesn't look like the type of guy who's going to be visiting anytime soon. So,
yeah. So I took him there because it was a place of no hope, but it was the first time I got hope in my life. I was like, if these guys know when they're going to die, started talking about these things. And what they said was two things. There was two themes, not exactly the same words, but the ideas I got from them, my interpretation of it was the only thing you think about over and over again when it's time to die is how you treated others, how you treated yourself. Did you live to your potential? Did you help anybody else live to theirs? Those play over and over in your head, and you will go insane and feel like you're in a personal hell if you don't come to terms with that. And if you have even a day to do something about it, you get to work on it. And these guys had years after their sentence to be waiting to die. They have to go through appeals, if they fight it. But in the midst of that, they came to terms with their how they treated every single person, why they did it, what was going on, finding surrender, acceptance, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, humility, finding these principles that gave them a place to rest inside themselves. So it didn't matter if they're in Supermax or, on death row or whatever. So this was a place I got to be in so much because I stayed pretty much in the medical office and on death row. And then when I wanted to go to sleep, I went to a little, we had about a 40 guy, no, maybe 200 guys. I don't know. 2 bunks all the way around, probably 150 guys in one little bay that did all the jobs of the prison. Like I said, I wasn't in there for killing. Yeah, the workers. Keep the place going. But I got to spend most of my time where the other guys didn't, was being a medical orderly and nobody wanting to touch dead bodies or nothing. I didn't seem to have a problem with it. It was a good job. They brought me in. I had my first fried turkey there. Yeah, they looked out for me. A bunch of big
touch a couple bodies, have a fried turkey. We're all good.
Yeah. The funny thing is, governor at the time came through there, and all these fat.
Is that Bush?
No, at the time the governor. It was not Bush, but Chris. No, not Chris. Christie, maybe.
No, Christie was Jersey.
No. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. It was. Hold on, I'll remember his name. It was. Was it?
This is like 06, 07, right?
Yeah.
This has got to be Bush.
Okay,
yeah,
so
it's got to be Jeb.
I didn't know. Like I said, I know nothing about politics. All I know is they locked us all down. This big shot comes through, sees all these inmates all jacked up, and sees these guards like belts, like their bellies are over their belts, and he goes, "All right, take all the weights out of the area." Instead of teaching these guys how to go on a diet and work out, they just trying to make the inmates fatter.
Yeah.
And I thought I was like, that's politics. That's why I don't try to understand it or even look at it, because it's ridiculous. Their solutions. Instead of getting these guys healthy, we ain't gonna do that. We're just gonna take the weights out, and they did. They took our weights out.
I feel like it's all politics, and this is just a great example where it's like you're talking about other human beings, regardless of where they're at, and what they've done.
Right.
It's like it's all about checking a box to solve a problem in your head that you can then speak to from a stump somewhere and be like, there was an average weight of blank in the prison, and the average amount that someone could bench was blank, and now it's not, and our guards are looking good. Like, you assume like it's not like
statistics. Well,
why is that guy here?
Right.
First of all, why is that guy a guard over there?
Right.
Like maybe he should do some fucking push-ups. You know what I mean? Like there's no like sitting down and having a conversation. I'm sure some guys do that, but obviously he didn't.
Yeah, the majority of that, and I'm sure there's people that mean well and try to do it for the right reasons, but they get discounted quickly by, they want numbers. They want, let's get this different. And so, he came through, and then, but what I learned from those guys was they got out of themselves. They became unaware of themselves anymore and working towards something else. And what they did was they transcended even the fear of death. Like truly, like they didn't not care about death, and they didn't care about death. That's just that. And they're fine with it. So they did what some smart philosophical people say, you should contemplate your death pretty regularly, so you're not such a nuisance, basically, when you're going to die. To everybody around you all freaked out. Like, dude, you knew this for almost 100 years now. Come on. But I get it. It's still a very, fearful thing. But these guys did in a very short amount of time, within 1 to 3 years, under the worst, maybe the best circumstances. No stimuli, no extracurricular, nothing to, no pretense.
Alone with their thoughts.
And they worked them out because they had to.
Were there any guys in there you thought were innocent?
that I thought were innocent.
Or that
Everybody
told you they
claims
were
to be.
innocent?
Yeah. There's a lot of guys that claim to be. It's not really talked about too much because there's a lot of snitching going on. If you get a guy, they had a guy in there that buried a little girl alive.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, horrible human being. But they used to light him on fire at least once a week and then put him out. You know, they'd squirt this stuff and light him on fire. And
The guards would.
other inmates, but
Other inmates,
all
okay.
condoned. Yeah, I should probably talk about that stuff too much, but yeah, they would torture this guy. So it gave him recreation. It was a recreation of sorts. Like, this guy is the devil, you know, this guy. And no doubt that guy, you know, I personally question marked his nose and, you know, as soon as he
question
walked,
marked his nose?
like, just crushed all this, you know, hit him, tipped the cameras up and hit him. And because he smirked at me when he came in there. And that was right in the beginning, kind of when I first got the job there. And that's basically what kept me good with that job, because they knew I was in there. Of course, I'm a criminal. I'm not that kind of criminal. You know what I mean? There was degrees of people. And when they told me this guy's story, I got sick to my stomach. I felt the right way I should feel.
Yeah.
I acted out of maybe, I don't know, some self-righteousness. It wasn't a good place where I was coming from. Because it's already been done. He's already being sentenced to death. He's going to get lit on fire. There was like things coming in that guy's future. I just got so confused. You know, I hit him.
Yeah.
But I had enough sense to tip the camera up so they didn't catch me on camera.
And they wouldn't have cared.
Nah, they wouldn't have cared, but they got to stick to some sort of rules.
We don't see it. Don't ask, don't tell.
Right. Everybody kind of turned around right when I did it. But anyway, this guy, so he comes in, now they have a target of why they feel the way they feel. Not owning their own stuff. This guy's
worst.
bad. Yeah, so we're going to attack him. So that keeps a lot of people from doing what these other guys do. Now, these other guys, they don't participate in the knowledge of what that guy's coming in for. They don't even, it's like gossip to them. They don't want to know. They're fixed on their being about their families, their last days. They got a very strong sense of minding their own business. You know,
So there's a mix.
There's a mix, yeah. And then there was these other guys that used to eat their own poop and try to kill themselves and cut themselves, and I have to go in and clean up and get them, and well, not get them, but clean up afterwards. So I wear these big, you know, hazard things, and these guys were on the phone with people from their family, like, you don't care about me, still being selfish, self-centered. You know, granted, they're in a bad predicament. You know what I mean? They're waiting to die too. But these other guys who said, you know what, I probably deserve it. And this is where I discovered every time in the past why I got out of stuff. It wasn't because of my thinking. Yeah, it was, my thinking was so stupid it wasn't even funny. But it wasn't nothing I did. It was a little simple procedure of, I surrender. I accept that I probably deserve this. I'm going to stay honest, open-minded, and willing. But how I'm going to do that is I'm going to be quiet. And I'm going to stay humble. Yeah, you know, I'm not contesting this, nor am I admitting it.
It sounds like you kind of took that step to doing that, though, right in court.
Yeah, right in court.
Yeah, it's like you kind of, even before you got in there, that was your, whether it was like watching the Hallmark commercial the night before.
Right.
Like whatever the little thing was, you were just like, this is fucked up.
I'm just defeated. Yeah, I'm in a state of surrender. What I did, though, is by writing that stuff down, I caught it. I was a very slow learner. But when something clicks, I put it in all, like I integrate it. Once I know it works, I use it everywhere until it's part of me. And what I noticed was the theme. I was like, how did I get out of that, and that? How is this happening? How come every time I surrender, it gets better, and then the minute I start rebelling, it goes bad for me? And there's this like little voice inside of you that tells you shouldn't go out tonight. And I heard that 1,000 times. Like, it always told me the right thing to do. Like, yeah, I hear you. We're going to do this, and then we'll figure it out later. And I'd be in there going, God, why didn't I listen to myself? And it ain't me, but there, I think this is in everybody. It's kind of like maybe it's self-preservation, maybe it's God, who knows? But but it's there, and now I've learned to nurture that and to hear that more clearly. And it brought me here, meeting you. which, you know, it's a gift to come up and just meet somebody off the fly like that. And then you know, it's just that happens to me all the time. Like, that's how I live now. That only started happening a few years back when I started getting the concept of my worth. I hang out with, sometimes some people own tons of stuff. Some people own nothing and they live on the streets. I got friends and all from everywhere, from all
clear.
Yeah. And they're all just as meaningful. Not that I hang out with all of them. Some of them I do, some of them I don't. It has nothing to do with their status in
Right.
life. It has to do with whether they're sincere, authentic people today. Because that could change any time.
I had my guy Charlie in here last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and he had been a prison guard actually on death row.
Oh, wow.
In Nebraska for I think like 10 years or something like that back in the day. And he had a lot of interesting takes there that I really got to review myself again because it was all over the place. I mean that in a good way. Like he had a lot of different takeaways about life and similarly to the way you're looking at things. But he made a point where he was like, I think he asked me first, he goes, what's the most important thing in your life? Like to survive or whatever. And I said, my health. And he goes, I disagree. And I'm like, why? And he goes, it's freedom. I said, why freedom? And he goes, because I can't tell you how many people I met who would have given terminal cancer just to live one day where they got to make the decision of where it was.
Yeah.
Because they were forced to be somewhere else. And so, like, I guess my question for you is, was there obviously was a major turn here that happened right before that last bid. But when you're in there looking at all these guys who are on death row, they're never going to get out. Or even the guys in there who are in there for life or whatever, did crazy shit. You seem to have stayed above it and taken even some of their stories with you as like an example. But it sounds like you were finally ready to be free. Not just free of like walls of a prison, but like free of drugs, free of worrying about, you know, my status with everyone else, free of being concerned about who does what in the world, as you just laid out, like everyone else, like, you know, where their ranking is, free of all these thoughts that it was like, you used to live by this, I do this with these people at this time because that's what it is. And if I don't, it's fucked up. Now you're like, whatever, man. If I'm free on the outside and living and being good to people, that's kind of it.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to go anywhere, do anything, and it's fun. When you're not, you know, like there's not a driving force controlling you. So when this, when the guard that you were talking to was talking about how you would give anything, like I remember looking out the window in South Florida, and it's a dirty, closed screen, but just to be able to see something that nobody could see right now, like a plane flying by or something, you know, it was almost spiritual in nature. You know what I mean? A cool breeze coming through the window. There's no AC in Florida. So, yeah, cool breeze coming through the window and looking out at a night sky. I love looking at night skies. I was in prison long before the walls went up. I was in prison in my mind. I couldn't leave my mind. Like, that's what it became. I lived in my head so long that I couldn't get out. And even now I have to go through a process. I need to pray. I need to do a million things. Not so much now. It's become more of a nature. But at first, there was like a 50-point checklist to just get like a breath of being, just being, you know. And this is a gift that I was given a long time ago due to fear, due to using my brain for the wrong things. I made it something unachievable to be a human being. I always had to be go, 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 you know, don't stop. You're building some. I didn't know what I was doing. And but I was putting a lot of effort into it. I spent a whole career I didn't think money was the answer. I thought the people that could take the money was the answer. So, you know what I mean? Because it didn't matter to me how much money you had if somebody could just come and snatch you up.
Street justice thing.
Yeah. And if you had that kind of power, and I kind of digested that at an early age too, that power was more important than a monetary, you know, a symbol of energy.
It's a loaded word, power.
Yeah, power, yeah.
It can mean a million things, but it comes back to the same result no matter what.
For me, it was a surefire way of getting deranged because I thought it was power to control what feelings I'm going to feel and not have the ones I didn't like. Now, I didn't know that's what I was doing. Yeah, but I was setting a world around. So there's a guy, David Goggins.
Oh, yeah.
He's awesome.
I was sitting on that floor.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is my life.
Yeah.
This is my life right here.
Yeah. I had a time when I OD'd and I was dead for a couple minutes. And
When was this?
Oh, this is one of the Miami times. I got airlifted to a hospital in Coral Gables, I think. And this doctor brought me back. And the first thing I said, because I had such a peaceful experience, first thing I said was like, who ripped my shirt? And I had like bullets falling out of my pocket. And I was like, what's that noise? And he's like, looks like bullets. I said, well, they ain't mine. He goes, well, they ain't mine. He goes, so, and I was like,
doctor's kicking him away. Like,
it's all good. It was a nice place. They were very nice to me. He's like, I just saved your life. Can you forgive me for the shirt? I was like, yeah, no problem, doc. And but I had this experience where I wanted to go back because it was like something euphoric. It was peace. I didn't know it at the time, but I had this out of body experience with lights and all that. And
did you see anything?
Well, everybody was a globe of light. I don't know if it was space, but it kind of looked like that. And I started getting real worried about where my mom was, and something came over me.
Were you anywhere? Like, were you in a place, or
I was floating out with no body. So I was floating out with no body. I've been dead 2 minutes, 37 seconds at a time, total of like 3 minutes. And then bringing me back. And the doc said, usually you have like some form of retardation. I'm not saying that's not the case for you, but he's like, I think you're all right,
I would have said that in court later. I'd have been like, technically I might be retarded.
I'm a little off, So when I had this experience, though, it hit me later in life when somebody said God doesn't talk to you in your head. He reveals things to you. That's when you get this revelation that, oh, man, I didn't see it that way. And you start seeing something totally different. I had that. I had a revelation that, and I put words to it to explain it sometimes when people would ask me what happened. I would say, oh, I heard this voice. But that's not the truth. I didn't know the truth at the time. I just didn't know how to explain it. I heard it, but it wasn't a voice.
You saw it. But you.
It was revealed to me that everybody's connected. That the only thing I suffered from was the illusion of disconnection from others. And that didn't make no sense at the time, but I had a lot of peace. But since I've grown into that knowledge or revelation, because it's not my knowledge, it's not something I knew. It was just something
experience.
It was an experience that I had that I never even thought really much about other than I liked that piece. And,
so you didn't, at the time, you didn't reflect on anything. You just kind of did.
Yeah.
And so then later you're like, well, wait a second. Let's think about that.
Yeah, way later. Because right after I left that hospital, I had a friend of mine. He dressed up a nurse. And to get me out of there, we came up with this plan. I could have just walked out. The doc, so my boy, he's a big trafficker. He's doing 28 years right now. But he comes with this nurse that he took to a Halloween shop, put the Halloween nurse. She's got this skirt, and she comes in with a wheelchair. He's like, I'm Dr. Pex, He's like, I'm here to take this patient. They're like, okay, whatever, and I'm like, wow, this is a really good plan. The girl could barely push me. She's in high heels.
She's got like titty pasties on.
It was so hilarious. I go out of the hospital and he's got a limo. My girl at the time, my daughter's mother, is in a car in front of us. She starts going down on me, and I'm like, oh, Lord. My girl's right there. I said, take me to the Hyatt. That's where I left this stuff. I had buried my gun and my drugs that I OD'd on under these plants on a balcony in the Hyatt.
In the Hyatt Hotel.
Yeah, and this stuff just killed me.
Under the plants.
Under the plant. I kind of dug them up a little and just kind of put it on
like
there.
Like in the lobby?
No, up in my room. So I had to get back there. Okay. Yeah, it was Juvenile and somebody was performing around there, and they were in the lobby.
Juvenile, what a throwback.
Back then.
Holy shit.
So I was over there doing some crazy stuff. I needed to get that gun back, and I had those drugs that I was like, I came out of that bathroom. I was like, I did too much. And that's all I remember. My girl started calling saying her dad was the governor. You better save him. They got me to this hospital, private. I didn't get arrested. So I get back I said, take me back to that hotel. So the my kid's mother at the time, she's like, "Where are we going?" I was like, "I got to go back there. I can't have that gun out, running around." So I said, "We got to go back there and go right up in there and do the same stuff that just killed me." And I come back down and I told her, I said, "Go back to Naples. I'm going to stay in Miami with Dr. Peck's over here and this nurse." Yeah. Oh, it was crazy. I forget why I brought that up, but
We were talking about the experience that you had and how you got right out of it and didn't think about it.
didn't think about it. So when this guard was talking about how if you can get 1 minute of freedom, you crave that. You built that idea, but that's not really what it is, because if freedom was achievable for the guys that were waiting to die that weren't leaving their cell, freedom is achievable now, here, in this present moment. It is never anywhere else. So even though they painted that picture, convinced that guy that that's all they needed, they'd still be in prison when they left there. I was still in prison when I left prison. Yeah, because I couldn't get that gratitude for that moment. Whereas in that place, all I had to see was a touch of life, and I was so grateful, and I was in the moment. And that's when I realized it was an inside job all along. It was an inside job all along. It had nothing to do with my outside, the exterior. That was actually a manifestation of what I was living.
When you say, can you explain that?
Yeah, so I'm in this cell. All I need is a bird, a sign of some kind of life. With this cool breeze hitting me, I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. And that's freedom. That's kind of like freedom. When you line up with it and you're in the moment, you get to experience it. That was freedom for me. I overshot it. So I would get out and let's go get a drink. Let's do girls. Let's do all these things. Just chipping away at my freedom. It's never anywhere else. It's not something else.
It leads to crime and drugs and all that always.
Oh yeah, that leads. Yeah. Well, the thing that leads to all that is the search for what's already right here. Like right here, right now with you, most important time in my life. When I get to the next moment, most important time in my life.
Presence.
The presence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's where life is. Everything else is just in the head. The one doctor that my friend turned me on to, he says the memory should only be used to recall what doesn't work and not do that. You know what I mean? That's like kind of how you survive. But we use our memory for all this stuff. And then we got pictures replaying realities that are gone. They're not reality no more. So you get...
You're saying not even to look at that.
Don't even, yeah. Like I try not to pay attention to it all. Just recently, because of you, actually, I got back on Instagram because I wanted to, sign up. Yeah, because of you.
Sorry to hear
that.
that.
It's your fault. No, but it's funny how I did that for a good reason. Next thing you know, I'm looking at this thing too long. I'm sitting on the toilet, start going through all this is interesting. And I end up 2 hours on the toilet with hemorrhoids. So I thought to myself, I was like, damn, I really like being connected, and this is the way people connect. I said, you know what? I don't need to be on this thing. So I practiced some self-control and I left it alone. But there was a time when I had the Facebook that my little nephew did some skit, my little 12-year-old nephew with another 12-year-old, and they did a skit on this TikTok, and then they sent me the thing, and I had to get the thing to look at the thing. And
you're on TikTok.
Yeah, now I'm on TikTok, and I was like, and now I'm hooked on TikTok. It was like one after another, dogs doing funny shit. I could watch that all day. Yeah, I got dogs doing dog things on my Instagram. I got very limited technological, prowess or whatever. But I forget again where I was at.
We were talking about presence. You were saying like seeing a bird outside,
right.
The smallest, like that. You said really compelling. That was freedom. Like that moment was freedom.
Right. I had no idea what that was. I was in South Florida again. I was in there. I had this experience. Kid comes in. He's got 2 life sentences. Young kid, 22, but he was trafficking big weight. He had a cutlass. He had a good life. He had a whole family album of all the hot chick, good life, maybe a kid or two. And he's gone forever. And we were talking, and I was coming off of something. I was sick still, but I had some crippy weed. So we started smoking, and I remember having an experience of laughing. I hadn't laughed at that point, probably a long while. There was nothing funny. You know what I mean? Nothing. But in the midst of smoking this weed, and it wasn't just because of the weed, It was because this kid had a need for how to live now. And he had a lot of life in him. He's a tough, kid. He had good heart and everything. And I got to let him know how to do time. And in the midst of that, we were talking, and we cracked a joke about something, and it was a real laugh. Nobody getting hurt, just a moment. And I was like, wow, that's weird. What was that? And I felt it. It was like a rumbling, like a big laugh.
And this is in the state prison, right?
This is in a state prison down in Miami, yeah. And so I was like, wow, it was like a spiritual awakening. Now, somebody might say that was from smoking a crippy weed, which was definitely probably getting the self-obsession out of the way, but it was something I was missing out on. So when I got to, I think it was around that same time I was doing that time, and there was a cool breeze coming through. It was a cooler month or whatever, and I had that little experience. Later on, when I woke up, I realized what that was. I was finally in the moment, just for a second. I think I liked cells when they were all locked, and it was like a secure place for me. You know what I mean? My inmates never been a problem for me. They throw people in, they didn't last long, but they weren't a problem. Once the whole world was locked and they could only come in one door and I could see them and there's blocks all around me, I could chill for a minute. I could be late at night, not when they're doing all their stupid head counts and stuff, but late at night when it was peaceful and quiet, I'm looking out that window. I had that experience. That all clicked later on, that living is being in this presence. The memory is only for things that keep me out of the present. Don't do those things, to remember that. And maybe do some things that keep you in the present better.
Yeah. I feel like good memories can be a torture or a beautiful thing, depending on your perspective. Right. So I don't know if I go that far. I understand why that was why that concept, though, like memories are only for learning from something, was so important for you. Yeah. Because it's like, well, so many trains went off the track here, and it was strictly because I wasn't paying attention at all. Right. And so now I know where I wasn't paying attention. Right. I don't want to remember some of the shit that person did. Right. So let's not even mess in that. Let's not even swim in that pool, and let's focus on the present and the future. If I were in your shoes, I'd probably think the same way. Yeah. It would be nice, though, one day, if you could look back, because, you had a daughter in this time. Like, there was some good stuff. Oh, yeah. There's always good stuff. I mean, it's a good one. When you tell a story, it is technically a memory when you're talking about, like, even like when you picked up those chicks in Georgia and brought them to Florida. Yeah. Like, there's still stuff that shines through, even if you don't realize it or not. No, 100%. You should be able to look back on that. Yeah. Even if it got you arrested at the end. Yeah. And be like, oh, you know what? There were a couple things there. It was a good time. Like you're living a little bit. You know what I mean?
Good stories to tell in the cell,
Sure. But like the other thing is the last bid, you keep on saying that this is where you found those little moments of freedom and everything. I got to think it's tied to the fact that you were always on the take at every other point that you were in prison before that. When you went in at 15, you had to learn how to survive. You had to learn how to make money, protect guys, do whatever. You get out, life of crime. You get back in, same deal. Let's get out of here, but let's make money before we get out. We'll run the prison. You talked about that whole thing. Yeah. And this is the first time where you're like, you know what? Yeah, I'll cool off. I'll be an orderly. I'll talk to these motherfuckers. See what's up. And then you're like, oh, damn. Wow. I didn't need to run around here like I run the place. I just, it is what it is.
Right. That I believe that 100%. That I abused the memory to fulfill my own wants and needs so bad that I had to only use it. So when that guy said that, it wasn't too long ago that he said that. I experienced that because I practiced that to start somewhere. It's like, you know what, the memory's no good for me. I can only think about these things. So I knew my nature was to obsess and fix on an idea. So I gave my brain something to do, an idea like God. Something I can't figure out, something it can always work on, add a little more up later on. But it gave it something to do while I can be. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah. And now, like you said, actually my friends around me bring up things like, they'll say sometimes like, you do have a good memory. Or they'll say things like, I had to point out to a friend of mine that he was happy. I took a picture and he smiled, so I blew his face up and I sent it to him. I said, "Do you even know you're happy here?" Because he didn't know.
Yeah.
And he sent me back. He flipped me the bird. He thought I was making fun of him. I was saying, "No, dude, you constantly say how miserable." And then I turned around on myself. I was like, you know what? I say a lot of this stuff that I have to revise.
You're making my point for, and this is a good
Yeah.
thing. You're making my point for me, and maybe you should just keep doing exactly what you're doing because it works for you.
It's
like
working. Yeah.
you're more tricking yourself, and I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Just to like stay out of your own way of where your mental's taking you in the past.
Yeah.
That's healthy.
It's a good description.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good description of what I do. I always say that I try to stay out of the way of these principles. I try to stay out of the way of this, higher power that I don't fully understand, but I know it works. You know what I mean? So I stay out of the way of that, and I end up in remarkable situations with remarkable people all the time.
Clearly.
It's
Because
wild.
now it's 15 years past any of this.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about what you ended up doing. I mean, you own a business and everything. Like, it's such a cool story, and I want to hear about that. But, like, how long did it take to even get there? Like, how did that all come together once you got out?
I came out of prison that last time. It was during the crash, which you spoke very good about. Yeah, and the guest you had, very knowledgeable. But I came out when there was no jobs, with no history of working. So I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to go to a homeless shelter. Now, my mother was like, no, just come home. And I said, I've been homeless for a while now. I need to let the outside match the inside. So I went to this homeless shelter, and I made my only job. I think this was based in that guy, kind of honoring him. So as long as I got that guy and my mom, that sponsor I told you about, that started making sense of stuff. He'd been writing me the whole time in prison. So I tried to honor what he does. So I made my only job while I was there. If a guy came in shaking, I was physically fit. I came out, I had built my life, built my physical back up, and was sharp. So I said, I'm gonna get to know every single person that comes through the homeless shelter. And I did that. And I started volunteering, and then I started working. I didn't care what it was, $8 an hour, $10 an hour. I didn't care. So I'll work, and then all of a sudden I started getting calls. I was like, well, I can't do this and that. I said, well, what about this guy? He needs a job. But my only job from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep was to respect the welfare of people, especially the ones coming in broke down. I give a pair of socks, something basic they didn't have and meant a lot to them. I would do stuff. I'd go work. You don't need a lot of money to help a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Good point.
yeah, and I would just show up, whether I was doing it for free or doing it for. I used to say I'm on the clock with God. If I get paid money, spiritual money in the bank, whatever. These were all ideas I digested listening to this one guy that was really good to me.
Yeah.
And so I made a 90-day commitment there, and by the time like 75 days came, my brother was offering me his place to take over the lease. And I had enough money. I saved up. I went from like $8 an hour up to like 25, 30 an hour.
Pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty quick. And then I got a pretty good job with a guy I was helping. He brought me to this other guy who owned a bunch of stuff. He ended up being a big influential guy. Like, he caught me because I knew sign language from not like fluently, but you had to talk to people through very little spaces sometimes.
Yeah.
So you'd have to know sign language. And so he caught me talking sign language to this lady that was selling these little flags or whatever. She was deaf. And so I was going back and forth with her just because I was curious to see if I could remember any of the stuff I knew.
Yeah.
And he caught that, and he took it on like I was like a gem or something.
Like a genius.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
Yes. I think that's one of the reasons. And then I ran 5 of his warehouses like it was nothing. All the designers came to me. I started moving furniture. That's the first.
He became his guy.
Yeah, he liked me a lot. But for a certain amount of time, I seemed to turn into the leader of any place. And he owned his own place, and I wasn't trying to do that. I was trying to be his guy and take pressure off of him. And so all these designers started coming to me directly, and he's like, dude, he goes, you want to go in business? He goes, everybody comes to you anyway. He goes, why don't you just, go do your own thing and I'll help you. And I was like,
And
man.
what specifically, like demolition and stuff?
No, this was the the moving company.
So this was just the moving.
This started
stuff.
with just, this guy giving me 2 trucks to use.
Yeah.
I started going all over Florida up to New York, moving people.
No shit.
Yeah, and all in my free time. I still worked 40 hours a week for him. So I would leave on a Friday, be back by Sunday night. He would like, hey, a ticket came through. It was in Delaware. He goes, what? He goes, what were you doing in Delaware? He goes, I told you could use the trucks to do local jobs. I was like, you didn't say
You're
local.
running through it 100 miles an
hour.
I'd run. Wait for the camera.
Yeah, I just tell him the truth. And he's like, that's what I like about you. One time I lied to him and he lit up into me. He's like, one thing I hate is a liar. And I didn't want him to feel bad because my buddy I was trying to cover for him, I kind of lied a little to him. First time I ever did it, it was for somebody else. And he lit into me. I was like, dude, I'm sorry. I apologize. He's like, no problem. Just don't do it again. Never did it again. And he was just he is a good guy. And to this day, he's always asking how I'm doing. He tells me to come by his stores. And, we do a lot of different
How many people you have working for you now?
Well, right now I got 3 that are solid. And then I hire anywhere from, I don't know, could go through 20 people.
Wow.
And it's just what they need to get going, put a few bucks in their pocket. Some of them stay, some of them don't. I've had up to 32 guys working for me. That same prison that I went to at first, I had a demolition company too. They paid me to demo that prison, which was crazy.
You demoed the prison
I
you were
demoed
in?
the prison for this.
You don't do demolition anymore, though, do you?
Sometimes, yeah.
You still
it's
do?
still for certain contractors. I kind of like it. So I get a bunch of guys. I get to work. I just kind of make sure nobody
Good
gets
business.
Yeah,
It's good money.
I'm not the best at it. Some people do it a lot faster. yeah, I just
You
like
add up
it.
the hours for
Yeah,
the bill.
I do. I milk it.
Took your time on that prison.
Yeah,
right there.
yeah. In the prison, it was awesome because we were working with these they're like kind of confidential, very high up in the killing, for the government type stuff. So they were training these communication specialists. And so they wouldn't get, when they got overrun, they wouldn't get killed. They were coming down from Canada. But these guys that were training them were serious, dude. Really nice people. I got to talking to them sometimes, and they did some crazy stuff out there. It's kind of low key, but I got to look out at a field that I remember looking out at when I was young, and it was so surreal, like such a weird experience. I had so much hope in me and so much good stuff going on. Of course, I'm not in prison or nothing like that, but it was something totally different than that. It was the same place. And I remember like eating sandwiches right there, beating that guard up right there, all this stuff. The places I was forbidden, they left me to paint the warden's house one day, and I put eggs down in the sockets. Me and my boy had a mosh pit, and yeah.
Why would the warden let prisoners paint his head? What a dumbass! You get
I
what's
guess they
coming
thought
to you.
I was scared or something, or I wasn't gonna do nothing. I was like, dude, I hate you. At the time, I was like, yeah. It's like having So yeah, I was a incorrigible for a time there. But
I think you're proof that there is correction.
Oh yeah.
I think they should revisit that term for who they give it to.
That's
I
true.
think they probably, like, that last time in court,
Right.
every sign was there that no, maybe something's different here.
Right.
Just based on, just read the court record without even being there.
Right.
And you can kind of be like, wait, this is not the same. This is the same guy who's been fighting all these cases,
Right.
and CI doesn't show up and shit. And now suddenly he's like, you know what?
He just wants to lay down.
Send me to jail.
Yeah,
You know
I
what?
just wanted to lay down. I was so defeated. Yeah, and then the miracles that's happened since then, like, and it's only been a few years. Like, it took a lot of years of gaining a nature of not being, just being transparent. You know? Like I kind of seen those guys that were, waiting to die, that had that peace about them. They only had that because they didn't mind saying what was exactly on their inside without being unkind or.
But you had to grow into that.
I had to grow into that. Yeah,
It
it was
takes
a
a
lot
while.
of fear. A lot of fear. Like, what if, I've been doing this my whole life, hiding how I think, what I feel, masking it until it almost diminished to nothing. Not even knowing, nothing. Like, people would say, what do you want to do? I don't know. I have no idea, and then every once in a while, if something caught my attention, I ran it into the ground. If a good chick or anything that felt good. Like, oh, this is the answer. And I'd run it into the ground. I didn't know how to just be. You know? Yeah. And then the last few years, I've learned how to do that. Kind of living in, my one friend described it as living in acceptance. And I guess that's basically what I do, is nothing needs for me to act right now. I could observe without judgment. I could wait a little bit and see what this is. And if correction has to happen, it doesn't have to be by me. Like they'll get corrected, but it won't be by me. And most of the time, I'll walk into a scenario, and I know it can go either way. One thing I used to fear is if you don't give me the answer I want, I'm going to get in trouble because you are going to do this thing, whatever it is. Now I'm in acceptance. So whatever you do, I have no expectations. I'm just going to let you know what I need to say. You know, kind of like I need to express this and then leave it alone. And almost all the time now, it instantly turns into good stuff. Like, and I don't expect it. It just turns into
That's what happens, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just kind of manage. If you look, and I think this is applicable to anybody, regardless of where you've been or what you've done in your life. If you just if you go with the flow, but control how you treat the world and have at least somewhat of a positive attitude on things, and you're not just negative all the time,
Right.
usually over time, better things than not are going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, even when it doesn't feel that way.
Right.
Everyone's human. I think most people are, I guess. You know, you have a moment where you're like, oh, well, this all blows right now. I do that.
Yeah.
But you come out of it when you're not stuck in it, because you're at least putting yourself in the position every day where something can improve.
Right.
And it's like when you come from, I mean, to me, like, being in prison is like the bottom, right?
Right.
Yeah, but you got to recognize you're there,
Right.
you know. And for you, it didn't happen when you were 15. It happened later.
Way
And
later,
when you have that recognition, everything's up from there.
Right.
You know, even if it takes time, even if it's you almost have to like rebirth yourself in a way.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
It can still. You just have to go with the flow and let it develop.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. My aunt used to call me a late bloomer. That's a nice way of saying it.
I think she's right.
Yeah, late bloomer. That's me.
do you have a good relationship with your daughter today?
Not really right now. We did, and I made my amends with her. She's 22 now, so I'm pretty much excluded from her individuality. So,
Fair.
I'm not I didn't do all the things perfect, but I did let her know where to come. You know what I mean? For anything, anytime, there's no, you know, and I gave her some peace about the past. You know, it wasn't nothing to do with her. You know what I mean? I wanted to be there all the time, but right now she's going through whatever she's going through. She's not communicating with me for like about a year now, year and a half. And it's upsetting sometimes. I try to reach out to the mother sometimes. I just sent an email last night because a good friend of mine said, why don't you email her? I was like, I don't know her email. And he's like, and I looked up my messages and I have her email. I was like, damn, I could have been sent an email. Yeah. But she hasn't answered it. So it's humbling. You know, it is what it is. If there's anything I can do, I'll do it. But I'm not going to think about it until I can do something. You know what I mean? And if I meditate on it, I just want what's best for her. You know, I really do. If anything, I can do anything, I will. You know, and eventually she's gonna. From everything I heard about that age, at about 26 or 27, they start getting out of that and they start thinking for themselves. I think she has a lot of responsibility that's not hers, that she's taken on as hers.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even have to ask what that is. It could be a few different things, but
Right.
I think it's the same thing in the sense that there is something to it when you're 22, 23. It's like you're kind of coming into the world now.
Yeah.
It's a very weird time. It can be a very fun time, too.
Yeah,
I had a
yeah.
lot of great times.
She's probably having,
But it's weird.
ample time. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
what do I do?
Yeah.
What's going on with my life? You
Got
know?
all these choices. Yeah.
And you never really had a shot to do that.
Nah,
so you don't,
no.
you really actually, I
don't
mean this fairly,
understand it.
like you can't even speak to that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You were in survival mode.
Right. Yeah, in a lot of ways, she's more mature than me. In a lot of ways, like I've come closer to my age now.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, yeah, I was kind of emotionally stunted at 15.
I mean, you went to jail at 15.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not going to be mature. I mean, you'll be mature about a few things.
Yeah.
You've seen some shit. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
But you don't get a chance to really grow up. That's why I think you're a great example of where the legal system needs to and I said this earlier, but needs to have some humanity in it with especially like youth offenders.
Right.
There's usually an enormous cry for help on things, or like sometimes you're just a kid and you do something stupid, you know?
Right.
Like that's how you turn around, some guy grabs you by the collar. It's a natural human reaction. I know it's a cop, you can't do that, but like, yeah, you knock the guy out.
Right.
Then they all beat the shit out of you after.
Yeah,
You paid his hospital bills. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's wrong with me. But you're sitting here today. I really, really enjoyed talking with you.
Same here.
I love your perspective. Thank you for hooking this up, Mark.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, brother. But
Mark's a great guy.
I love story. Like I said, I love comeback stories, and your life has been a giant comeback story. And I think you're the way that you have such a soft view on things. Like you're a very unjudgmental guy. You're not. There's nothing about the way you had to be for years that's stuck in you today, and that's a really amazing thing.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it's been a big turnaround. Good people in my life brought it out of me too.
That's it.
Yeah, you're one of them now too. I appreciate your time here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been great.
Well, thank you for rolling through, and I hope everyone else enjoyed that like I did. Thank you once again, Mark.
All right.
We'll do it again.
Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.
Everyone else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace.